Okay, awesome. Honestly, I don't know if there's like such a thing as a string ghost or something, but I have no idea what that is. Literally, if I move the camera, like it goes away, but I don't see anything in front of me. Like I don't know what that is.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah,
is
it
that? I
could be
try to,
like a ghost spider web or something.
yeah, like it's weird. I don't know. Oh, okay. That
Oh,
wasn't
yeah,
so
nice one.
complicated. Yeah. Um, okay, so let me press record before we lose the entire. Oh, it is recording. Huh.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Forgot what I did a second ago. Um, okay, so really like normal people, they write notes and they are like really formal, but I'm very spontaneous and I feel like it just happens more natural when it's candid and just going with the flow of the conversation. And obviously, like I had so many questions pop up in my head that I could have written them down so I wouldn't forget, but I feel like
Hmm.
whatever, however it goes, it goes. Okay, so first of all, whoever is listening to it, obviously not live. So you don't have to worry if there's anything that you want me to take out after, which I assume probably there won't be, but if there is, you can always ask me to edit it out. Um, and okay, so first of all, if you can introduce who you are and how you came to create your social media to with the goal of what you do in it and explain a little bit of of what you do.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, funny story about that. Go on my social
Yeah.
media. It obviously a lot of my stories on there are, I don't even like to think of it as political. It's just like I see it as like issues are affecting people. Politics to
Yeah.
me still seems kind of like it's a necessary component, but I still get this feeling like it's like this like boring stuffy thing, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Like I'm just trying to get it down to like the facts that like we all actually care about.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, like my channels, I'm just a guy who is really into fitness and eating donuts. Like that's still how I see myself as an
That sounds
Instagram.
like the antithesis, but
Yeah, so it's just and eventually I do want to get to the point where like, not that I never will post about what's going on, but like it'll just, I mean, yeah, my social media won't be like such a serious
I thought you were gonna
place.
have like a slight Russian accent and you don't.
Yeah, so the interesting thing, so I'll just backtrack real quick. For me, I actually was born in America, but my Russian was my first language.
Oh,
I
okay.
When I speak, I still speak Russian pretty well.
Was vodka your first drink or
Well, it was my first drink in college. My first drink,
not as a baby?
it was like I think some Russian like juice that, I mean,
Okay.
Russian juice in my opinion is better than American juice. So
Yeah.
that's the only difference. But yeah. So Russian, I speak it pretty well. I know the culture. My mom's from Moscow. She came here in the '90s right after Soviet Union fell apart. My dad, he's from Kiev in Ukraine, but he left actually like in the '70s
Oh
when he was a
wow.
kid.
So you have like a one parent from each place, basically.
Yeah, but my dad's side of the family, they're Russian speakers. They don't. Maybe my grandparents knew Ukrainian at some point, but my dad, like,
Wait a
he only
second.
went
How do
there.
Ukrainians and Russians usually like typically communicate with each other? Because I feel like they have similar like like they have similar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, the thing is Russian is actually it's spoken by 40% of Ukraine, and you go to big cities like Kiev, Odessa, even if they're like in Western Ukraine, and every person there speaks Russian. So,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
like the actual language in Ukraine. I mean, I've heard it a few times, and I can it sounds different, but I can usually understand what they're saying because it's a Slavic language. But weirdly enough, like people say Ukrainian is closer to Polish, and I
So it
feel
has
like
like the same root words, similar like Latin
yeah,
root words or
it's
something
well,
like that.
all three are Slavic languages, but it's just I
Oh,
guess
okay.
for whatever reason it's more closer to Polish. And it's just like with Ukrainian, I can understand what they're saying, but with Polish, I feel like I can also understand what they're saying based off similarities to Russian words. But I feel like Polish sounds even more different than Russian. So I guess to me it's weird. Like I have an easier time understanding Ukrainian, even though I don't speak it, as opposed to understanding Polish. But it's
Interesting.
linguistics are linguistics, and that the whole region is complicated because with and that actually that I'll get into this as we talk later. But you had the Soviet Union, obviously, so you had
Yeah.
all these people melding together under a common language, and A whole bunch of Russians going to one part of the country, a bunch of Ukrainians going to another part of the country, Poles.
Intermarrying.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
and things culturally, Ukrainians and Russians are pretty similar, which is all why this whole conflict that we're going to talk about in Ukraine and just feels so surreal because these people, like the people on both
They're basically
sides,
like neighbors and friends being pit against each other, right?
exactly, and like none of them won the war, but there
Right.
there are certain facts that a lot of people aren't aware of, and so I'll just wrap up about myself. That's
Yeah.
like my whole background.
Yeah.
I didn't start posting anything like I had my Instagram first in 2015, and I used to have like 27,000 followers, and I
Oh,
didn't
really?
post anything political until the
Uh-huh.
COVID lockdowns and the BLM riots back
Hmm.
in 2020 because up until that point, politics, like I didn't care if someone like said this about Trump or they had this political view, it's whatever. It's like you have your political view, I have mine, we'll disagree. But
Yeah,
with the
conservatives
COVID
don't
lockdown,
care to disagree.
yeah, and the thing, and I mean whatever, that's people have the right. But with the COVID lockdowns and the BLM riots, so I live in Los Angeles. My city was really affected by it. I'm actually moving to Santa Monica in a week, and that there's this like really nice shopping center that to this day, like it's almost been 2 years since 2020, and it still hasn't gone back to normal.
Oh my God,
We
I can't
still,
believe it's been 2 years since the looting and everything.
yeah, it's
Wow,
great. Like
wow, wow.
it's not as bad as it was that year, but the vibrant and like happy energy, like it's getting back to where it was, but it still hasn't returned. So this had a pretty substantial
Wow.
effect. And I
Do
mean
they
that's
do
just
they
because
have the same bail reform laws in California that they do in New York where they just
oh yeah,
let criminals
yeah,
out back into over and over?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
the district attorney here in Los Angeles, George Gascon, things are getting so bad that you have people even on the LA City Council supporting his recall um, efforts, and because things are just getting worse and worse here.
Wow.
So yeah, that's like when I started posting because for me it was like if it gets to the point where like first of all businesses were being shut down, people can feed their families, all for the pretense of this virus. And don't get me wrong, the virus is real. I had it twice, and it wasn't
Same.
pleasant.
I had it
Yeah,
twice.
Delta and Omicron.
No, I had the like alpha.
Alpha. Oh, the OG. Okay.
Yeah, I had it for 3 months and I was like practically dying, but I'm a single mom. So I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. My kids need me. And I was
Yeah.
like, I was having a hard time breathing. I did everything I could. Hydroxychloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, all the fun
Mhm.
stuff. Got better, thank God. And got it again. I think it was Omicron the second time I got it. I had it for like 3 weeks instead of 3 months, but
Right.
I still have a little bit of brain fog from it. Not so much anymore, but I took all the vitamins and everything. It really helps. But
Hmm.
yeah, anyway. So you were saying with the riots and then what were you saying?
Yeah, yeah. So I was just trying to tie this into like how like why it basically got so bad with the riots and the lockdowns that's like why I started posting on my Instagram. And again,
Yeah.
like at the time I had 27,000 followers. I'm pretty sure a good amount of them were people on the left, which
What
you know,
exactly were you posting that you like
well,
climbed to that amount? Like
yeah. So I was just posting. I mean, there was like some memes I posted that were a little edgy
yeah.
and probably like
That
got people
you
pissed.
created or you were sharing other people's
That was like just sharing going around. It was just like
yeah.
pointing out the hypocrisy, like memes about the
Yeah.
hypocrisy, like, oh yeah, like we're all supposed to stay inside and lock down, but then if we want to go riot, then yeah, you can go outside, and as long as you wear a mask while like you're looting and stuff, you're still stopping the spread. And
As
it was
long
just
as you're killing people in the name of I don't know
social
Soviet Union,
justice.
you can also go with your tanks and kill people because that's also now you can go to war as long as you don't have to wear a mask anymore as long as
Oh
you're
yeah,
killing
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah, yeah. They've
because health.
yeah, help exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah for me like I just at my core I can't stand by and when there's hypocrisy, such gross hypocrisy going out,
Yeah.
and to the point where also if you try to speak out and point out the hypocrisy that you're called like a racist, like all these like labels, and you're accused of spreading misinformation, and you're not having an honest conversation. And yeah, that's like what it was for me. And pretty much as a result of all those posts, I got down to, I think now, well, currently I'm losing like a few more people because of my
But
view
didn't
on.
you gain all those people from talking about those things?
No,
Didn't
no.
you
So I just had 27,000 followers because people
for
liked
the
my
fitness thing?
yeah, yeah. Did they like
Oh, okay, okay. Then you got political and then you started losing the followers.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The people
Oh,
liked
okay,
me
okay,
because
okay.
like I'm like in shape and like I had like some shirtless photos or whatever. And then it's like, oh, the minute I start
So all
actually
the
sharing an intelligent opinion, it's like, oh, you're toxic. And yeah,
my COVID brain fog, I'm telling you, I'm like losing the I'm telling you, it was like it was a word that I was thinking of. All the I have to think of the word. All the vapid people left. I don't know what the word is for it. I'll think of it later when it's not relevant anymore.
yeah,
But basically all the um surface people left.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, to me, it really doesn't matter. Like, because at the end of the day, Instagram, social media, it's a very fake and artificial world. And
Yeah.
I I value myself as a human being to not put my value into like a fake artificial world. And
Well,
I
we
have,
tell ourselves that, but sometimes there is like an adrenaline rush with the response and the lack thereof without it because you come to depend on it. But if you have consistency with the response, then you don't really realize how you would deal with the lack of it because if you consistently getting the response that you need in the rush of dopamine or whatever it is. But yeah, it doesn't define who you are. We know that in our heads, but I mean, sometimes it does
well,
give that.
and that's I guess really been my litmus test for how I know when I'm telling the truth. Because uh kind of transitioning into what's going on right now. Basically, if I'm losing people because I'm posting information that's questioning the narrative,
Yeah.
that's, I know I'm on the right path. Because I'm not saying
And
everyone might
obviously it's
agree.
not stopping you from continuing to post what you want to.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, look, people don't have to agree with me. And this is a great time for me to clarify that, with regards to the current Ukraine-Russia conflict, I'm not pro-Putin. He's KGB, and my mom was threatened by the KGB when she was trying to come
Okay,
over
so
to
I thought that you were saying that whatever he's doing, whatever he's making his soldiers doing is actually good because you were showing me pictures of Nazi battalions in the Ukrainian army and he's kind of targeting those battalions.
Well,
It's
so
confusing because there's 50,000 Jews in Ukraine.
mhm.
You told me you're Jewish, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there's 50,000 Jews in Ukraine. So, and then the President Zelensky is Jewish. And all these people saying, like, demonizing him and all that, it's confusing
Yeah.
as a Jewish person because when you hear of a Jewish person, you think of it as like your family. So you
Mhm.
think to yourself, how could it be someone that A is anti Jewish if they're Jewish, and B is, I don't know, like I'm into the conspiracy theory situation of like the new world order when I see like proof of it to a
Mhm.
point where suddenly it becomes like everything is the Jewish people's fault and whatever because as a Jewish person I know that like if I'm getting all the money let me know where to get it from because I don't see any of it
Right.
type of thing like that. But that's what's confusing to me is when we generalize Ukraine as a whole and say it's good that people are attacking Ukraine because there's Nazi battalions. Okay, but there's also so many civilians in the crossfire. How do we make sense of what you were saying that it's that it's a good thing that they're attacking?
Right. So is a real complicated scenario. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So so here's what I'll say. Putin right now, he, I don't know what he's gonna do next. If he's, because right now, originally, first of all, like when he was at the border, I didn't
Wait,
think he was gonna.
how do you say Putin with a Russian
Russian
accent?
accent, Putin.
Oh, it's not like Putin. It's Putin. Okay,
Yeah,
it's very
yeah,
important. I needed to know that. Okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, basically when he was at, I never at any point when before he came into Ukraine, I was saying, oh, he needs to go in there, needs to clean stuff up. Because diplomacy should be that should be the first priority. And we need, whenever we can avoid needless human light or human casualties, people getting killed, that we should absolutely make that priority to avoid it.
Yeah.
So he invaded, and me, I'd say I'm a libertarian. All the libertarians, like guy I was following, especially this one guy, Scott Horton, who is huge about anti-war, the U.S. wars like Afghanistan and Iraq, just how bad they were and didn't accomplish anything. So his whole take on this was that Putin, like before Putin invaded, was that it was going to be, he's just him posturing. He's going to he's going to make it look like he's going to invade, and then he's going to back off to, just reassert his authority. And then, so that was my belief too.
When you attack, oh, so you don't believe that anymore?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about is before he actually invaded. Obviously,
Oh,
he
okay,
invaded.
okay.
Like
You
we're
thought it
seeing that
was
with
just like an empty threat that he was just trying to assert his
exactly.
dominance.
He
Okay.
invaded. So he invaded, and basically, like to just give you the part of it that when I found that he invaded, what I supported was that there's the eastern region of Ukraine. It's called the Donbas, and you got two republics there. You got Luhansk and Donetsk.
What do you mean by
And
republics? In the
as
government
in
or a
these are
location?
communities. These are communities that are ethnic, not just by language, but also
Oh, okay,
ethnically
okay.
Russian. They're ethnically Russian, and
But like a
also,
Ukrainian version of it.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you see, here's the thing about Ukraine. Ukraine's, like I was saying earlier, is a mix. So you have Ukrainians, uh, who, like, ethnically they're Ukrainians and they're mainly in the West, but then a lot of the ethnic Ukrainians also speak Russian because Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. But then you actually
Oh,
have,
really?
yeah, you have ethnic Russians who historically, like, even
Wait,
before,
when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, was it still called Ukraine?
yeah, it was called Ukraine, but the region of Crimea, and that Putin annexed in 2014, and the Luhansk and Donetsk and the Donbas regions, those were always ethnically Russians. Those regions, and the only reason why those regions became part of Ukraine is in the 1950s, when Ukraine's part of the Soviet Union. The Russian premier at the time, Nikita Khrushchev, he gave those regions, Crimea, Donbass, and the Donbass, as a gift to Ukraine. But it was symbolic because it didn't matter. Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union, and no one in the 1950s thought that the Soviet Union was ever going to dissolve. So they didn't. They didn't,
Wait,
like, think to
why
consider.
did your video pause?
Oh,
Your audio didn't pause, but your video paused. I wish my video paused because I need to blow my nose. I need my audio to pause for that.
yeah. My internet connection. Your video's pausing now.
That's good.
Yeah. Which parts I cut out at? Was it when I was talking about Ukraine in the 1950s?
Your audio's not cut out, so it's fine. It's just a video
Oh,
that got
okay.
cut out. I might
Right.
upload the video to YouTube eventually, but for now, the audio, it's just the audio that goes on the podcast. So you don't have to worry. Spotify, Apple, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you were
So
saying about all the different republics and locations, and the
right. So these Crimea and the Donbass, those regions were always ethnically Russian, and then actually back in 2014, what happened? So this is like getting into like how the situation that happened now, you can't really understand it without understanding what happened in 2014, because yes, Putin is invading Russia, or excuse me, he's invading Ukraine. And right now, it's a bad situation. There are, unfortunately, Ukrainians who are dying, which is wrong. No
yeah.
one should be dying.
Does he want it for the
And
rich soil? They say that they have the best soil for growing crops and things like that.
yeah, and especially in the Donbass. So pretty much what's been happening also in the Donbass. So I'm just gonna talk about the 2014 revolution
Yeah.
because that's important. So
So you're a
basically,
history buff.
yeah,
Okay.
it's the way that it's presented is that you had this Russian, and I'm going to be referring to my notes just because some of their names are a little
Yeah.
tricky to pronounce. So basically, in 2014, you had Viktor Yanukovych, who he wasn't necessarily pro-Russian, but he was trying to balance Russia and the UN, or the European Union needs, and he wasn't, that eventually it wasn't something he was able to sustain. And you had this groups of neo-Nazis and far-right Ukraine nationalists who basically came in and with the backing of the US government overthrew the government, ousted Viktor Yanukovych and put in their own guy. And the reason why the US supported it was
Sorry, I'm
because the
just trying
US
to see
has
why
a
my computer said that it's gonna die soon if it's plugged in. So I'm wondering if I didn't. Yeah, I have the wrong charger in the wall.
all good. Happens to me all the time.
Okay. Okay, we won't die now. Okay, so you were saying about, I don't remember these names.
So
Someone in charge
yeah.
in
So
2014.
Yanukovych was, he was the guy in charge of Ukraine in 2014, and the U.S. supported the coup that was led by far-right nationalists and literally neo-Nazis in the country to overthrow him. So this is before Zelensky kind of came onto the scene,
And what was their
and the
motivation to
reason why
overthrow him?
well, so this is where you look at the U.S.'s foreign strategy, foreign affairs strategy. The U.S. basically what's done, like ever since the middle of the 20th century, is it goes into countries that it feels like it can control and pose a strategic advantage, and if they can't control the person there, they'll just stage a coup, overthrow them, and replace them with someone who's more friendly to them. And the reason why they wanted to do this in Ukraine was because Russia, the
How is
the
someone,
America,
how are neo-Nazis going to overthrow someone and replace them with someone more friendly to the West?
the U.S. Well, so here's the thing. It's the U.S. State Department working with globalists like George Soros, the Clintons, and
What about
their
Klaus
whole thing
Schwab?
is exactly. So their whole thing is we're gonna, and they've done this in multiple countries. They create these quote unquote color revolutions where it looks like it's just a popular uprising of people who they think their government's like too fascist or isn't like giving them the human rights. So they all rise up together in this like beautiful democratic thing. And they do that, as a front. But then while, and like a lot of people, like
They
I'm
get
not saying
people
every
fired
single
up for a cause that
exact
actually serves them.
exactly, and kind of we saw that similar with the BLM riots, where not necessarily
Right.
everyone there is, like really evil and stuff, but like with the BLM riots, you had like Antifa and some extremist groups infiltrating them.
Right.
You have the same thing in these color revolutions. So they did that in 2014, and one really messed up thing they did was that when you had a bunch of peaceful Ukrainian protesters protesting against the current regime, they hired Georgian mercenaries as snipers to start shooting these protesters, and then they pinned it on pro-Russian separatists or like a pro-Russian
To
forces in
get
the
them even
country.
more fired up for the purpose they came for.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
wow.
And again, this is all done with the U.S. backing. There's a leaked audio call. It's like really famous on YouTube, where basically Victoria Nuland, who she's from the State Department, this back in 2014 after they succeeded in the coup, she's talking with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine at the time. His name, sorry, got so many notes. It's
Yeah, for
where do
sure.
I have this? His last name is okay. His last name is Pied, and as I get to his name, I'll give you the full name. But basically, it's a leak call. You can find it on YouTube. And she's saying, okay, so we need to get this guy in the government because he's going to be more favorable to the U.S. He's better. He's a better candidate for our choice. Okay, so she's talking with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, and they they were they were chose they wanted to put the prime minister to replace Yanukovych, and that prime minister being Arseniy Yatsenyuk, and they basically wanted him because he'd be a puppet for the U.S. Like he would take over,
So
he'd
how did
start
Zelensky come in the
becoming less
picture?
favorable.
I know that he used to be an actor.
So Zelensky, he came in, he was elected, uh, but he was elected on after this coup. So it's already like a fraudulent basis. Uh,
But you're
they
talking
there was
neo-Nazis,
also,
and
I have
now
to
we're
do more
talking a
research on it.
Jewish president.
Yeah, so it is. Look, when I first heard this, I was skeptical of myself too. But pretty much the
No, I
way that
believe you. I just
even
don't
happened
understand
was
how
that
that. Yeah, how one thing caused the other.
I the way look here's what I'll tell you. Jews working with Nazis did happen in World War II. George Soros, the leader, one of the prominent globalists, he himself collaborated with Nazis, and he's a Jew. And Zelensky, he basically
George Soros
the Nazi
collaborated
it's
with Nazis. He was there then. Like, is he alive? Is he not alive?
he worked. Yeah, no, he's alive. He's very old,
So,
but
oh,
that
okay.
that's a confirmed fact. You can yeah.
Wow.
So Zelensky basically he was put in this position again, like the U.S. Department, they've been meddling in Ukraine's government ever since the 2014 election. So I'm sure they also had a hand in getting him as a candidate. But basically, Zelensky, he's given these he's either turning a blind eye, which I doubt. So it's more so he's just kind of like to get more power himself. He's working with these neo-Nazi groups in the government and specifically giving them governing control of the eastern part of Ukraine. And
Why?
he
Why would he do that?
like when I say neo-Nazis, I'm not like when I say neo-Nazis, I'm not saying it's like, oh, like some weird fringe group. I mean, like that photo I sent you, they're straight up like in the Ukraine military, and
Why?
also
What's his
additionally like running their
motivation
own militia.
to what's his motivation to have neo Nazis run anywhere in his country? He's Jewish. Why
Well,
would he do that?
because Zelensky, he wants to get favor with the globalists, and the globalists, what supports their agenda is having a Ukraine that's more nationalist, like nationalist Ukraine that's more, more likely to get into NATO and work with them versus being with Russia. So Zelensky himself, he's a Ukrainian nationalist, and he's not necessarily he's not Nazi himself, of course, because he's a Jew, but through a coalition of the far right nationalist groups, he's kind of in this awkward position where he has to work with these neo Nazis in his government, and
Well,
they're
obviously, there's not.
like,
There can't be too many neo Nazis in Ukraine if he was voted into office.
oh, the thing is, I thought so too, but the more research I do on it, the more
They
shocking it
knew that
gets.
he'd be
So
good for them.
to give you like background to what was it?
They knew that he'd be good for their agenda, basically. So they voted for him anyway.
Yeah, well, he's basically a puppet, and by
So
the
do you
way,
believe in
he's
the
not
whole?
he's
Okay.
not
Yeah.
like what I'll say about Zelensky too is he's not the hero everyone's making him out to be, because one of the reasons why also Putin came into Ukraine was because Zelensky he shut down 3 newspapers that were criticizing him, which I'm sure Putin has done similar things too. Putin's like he's a very corrupt individual too, and
Goes
Zelensky
without saying.
also in a recent election he had his political opponent jailed and under house arrest. And so he has this history of pretty much doing the same thing that Putin does, where he just shuts down dissent and opposition. And then
Really?
what really motivated Putin in the last 2 weeks or recently to go into Ukraine was because of several reasons. One, Zelensky visited the Munich Security Conference 2 weeks ago, and he said that Ukraine was going to withdraw from the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, which basically said that Ukraine would not develop its own nuclear weapons. And then he also 2 months ago, stated that he had no intention of upholding the Minsk agreement because it threatened the survival of the Ukrainian state. Was the Minsk agreement? The Minsk agreement is basically the agreement that the Russian forces in eastern Ukraine came to an agreement with the Ukrainian nationalists, Nazis, in 2014, that these republics would be allowed to live in peace, but they would still be a part of Ukraine. And pretty much this is like where the whole genocide of Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine comes into play, because while Zelensky has been in office since 2014, it's been I'm not exaggerating, it's been constant rockets and missiles and bombings in
Since
eastern Ukraine
2014?
done. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a report from one journalist who says that the UN numbers since then is over 14,000 people killed, most of them being civilians.
What'd you
And
say?
I
The UN
all this
numbers?
was Yeah, the UN numbers.
But the
It's
UN
from
is
a journalist
completely
called.
corrupt.
They're completely corrupt, but this is based off like an estimate report, and
By
this
the
is
way,
coming from
I
a
know I'm like
journalist.
late in the game. I should have told you before, but if you have a headphone like with a mic or headphones, it will make less of like my echo and less of the sound of the computer. I was supposed to tell you before, but I'm on my third episode, so I forgot to tell you.
Right.
It's fine. It still
Okay.
works.
Well,
I'm
my
saying
head.
if you have it right next to you or something.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine. My
Just like
headphones are still
easy,
charging, but
yeah, doesn't have to be chunky ones like mine.
Okay. 1 sec. I'll check. Maybe these ones will work. So I'll just keep talking. I'll try to
Yeah,
turn
it
them
doesn't
on.
have to be
So
fancy.
yeah, basically it's these like the actual numbers is going to be hard to get because this whole genocide in eastern Ukraine is something that the world and the media has ignored, which is really sad. That don't get me wrong, what's happening in Ukraine right now is horrible. There are innocent people dying, but then it's like the same thing's been happening to these Russian speakers in Ukraine for the last 8 years, and no one's like said anything about it. And it's just it's just
Is
sad
Ukraine
when
a democracy
you bring.
technically?
Well, democracy by that the standard for democracy, unfortunately nowadays, the word democracy doesn't mean what it used to
And
mean. So
cheapened. Yeah.
Ukraine it's corrupt as it gets,
I mean, is it
and yeah,
officially a
it was.
democracy? Like it's meant to be one.
No, it's not, because the U.S. staged a coup in 2014 and overthrew a legitimately elected government and propped up an illegitimate one. And ever since then, they've a
But that was
country
before
that
Zelensky,
this country
no?
isn't democratic. Yeah, that was before Zelensky, but Zelensky, like everything after that, including Zelensky, has been built upon that foundation, and he's supported all the policies that have been that oppress the Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine. And I'm just trying to get the
Yeah, for sure.
Bluetooth from these things
Does it have a mic
disconnected.
on it? It doesn't have a
So
mic on it, does it?
I think it has a built-in mic. It should.
Oh, really?
Let me
Okay,
just
awesome.
getting it hooked up.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
What was I gonna ask you?
Show Bluetooth devices.
Now your video froze again.
All right, there we go.
Your video froze.
All right, it's connected.
Do you want to try to turn your video on and off or something? Because it froze.
Oh, is my video not working right now?
It's frozen.
That's really, shows yours was working and mine's working.
Oh, really? It's not frozen by you?
Yeah, that's.
Let's see. Okay, you just turned it off, right? You can just edit out this part. You want to turn it back on?
This could be because I tried hooking up my Bluetooth speakers. I don't know if they're like messing with the video quality.
Oh, you didn't turn off the video? It just turned itself off?
Yeah, I haven't done anything. It's just the video is like being weird.
Did you try turning it
Is
off
my
and on
video
again?
working right now?
No, it's black.
Huh.
Do you want to turn off your video and then turn it on again? See if it helps.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try doing that. Now it says my Zoom meeting's not responding.
We can I can pause the recording and you can go out and come back in. Do you want to try that?
Yeah, let's try that. I'll try logging back in and also get my Bluetooth headphones hooked up.
Okay,
and
I'll pause
see
the
if that works.
recording. You sign out and come back in.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, probably. I don't know where we were up to, but I know you sent me a video with this guy saying that now there's like criminals rampant on the streets with military grade weapons that Zelensky handed out, and now it's enabling them to and also literally let people out of jail, which is in the news. It's not even, you sent me an anecdotal, like a guy talking about it
Mhm.
and freaked out about it, but the fact that it's also in the news, that in like a positive light, that oh, he's being creative and he's letting criminals out of jail to help with the good cause. But at the end of the day, like,
Mhm.
depending on the criminals are criminal. Like you can't just like let people. Okay, your video paused, by the way, but at least your audio didn't. Um, you can't just like let people out of jail that are convicted of like rape and things like that and expect them not to reoffend.
Yeah.
um and you can't be like, okay, channel your murderous thoughts towards our enemy. Like, I mean, it doesn't always
Mhm.
work that way. The point is that they rebel and do what they want. That's usually what a criminal does, I would think. So I don't know, it's very confusing also because, like, for example, I grew up Chabad and I see pictures of Zelensky with like Chabad rabbis and things like that. So for me, it gives me like a warm feeling towards him. Like, oh, like he's friendly with people that I know would be friendly to me. Like I feel like it's almost in my circle. And then he goes and does things like this. It just messes with, like, I don't understand. Are you of the opinion of all of these, like the leaders in the world, they're really just puppets to the point where they're literally actors? Like that's why Zelensky was the one appointed, because he's an actor and he can do the job well of being the puppet, to just simply be there to further the agenda of the New World Order. And honestly, it's funny with all of these people that are saying, like, they make fun of conspiracy theory and all that, but at the end of the day, like, it's not even a secret anymore. Like it comes out of their own
Mhm.
mouths. We are making a new world order. We are doing, like, they will tell you themselves. It's not a secret. Like it's not. We're not saying
Yeah.
it just about them. They're saying it about themselves, and it's almost like this cognitive dissonance or whatever you want to call it, where it's just you can't hear something that you're against, because again, part of the agenda is pitting people against each other. I don't know if you ever have you do you ever watch Crazy Russian Dad? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Uh, it's
He's
like some
hilarious.
YouTube guy.
Yeah, he's mostly, he puts
I,
videos on
I, I
Facebook.
probably,
He's hilarious.
yeah, yeah, I've probably seen it. Yeah, I think I've seen a few videos
Okay,
from him.
okay.
Yeah.
So he kind of like, he lived through the USSR, and he was putting out a warning one time, and he was saying, listen, like, I've been through, the bread lines and all that. And he's like, you need to see, like, because when you look at those situations, they seem extreme, they seem unbelievable, it seemed like, okay, we can't have that now, that was the olden days, we're beyond that. But when you have a subtle
Mhm.
situation now, which actually is not so subtle anymore, but when you have a subtle situation, you think, okay, but it's not that. But he was saying, listen, I've been through it before, so I know what precedes it, I know the warning signs, and I'm telling you that before you have a full-on communist regime, you have obviously repression of like free speech and all that. But he was saying you also have, like, on purpose, governments will pit the people against each other, because once you have that
Mhm.
happen, then you create the problem that now you are the savior for, and they're so desperate that
Mhm.
they'll beg you to be their savior. But actually, you backhandedly cause, like, without them realizing, you cause them to pit them against each other by, you know, having control in the media through finance, like backing it with finance and everything, which is why, like, all the stations, like,
Mhm.
they literally have the same script sometimes. um but are you like, with all the research that you do you believe that it's to the point where Zelensky is literally like acting, like he's acting, or is it just that, like, he agrees with their agenda, and they're like, okay, he's a good, like, they're using him, but he's genuinely like feeling like he wants to be president and all that, like he's not pretending whatever he's doing.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion it's a little bit of both because
Mm.
every politician's selfish and they're going to look for ways to secure power and they'll do whatever they need to do. And maybe there was times where he might have been genuine in some of the things he's posed, but these globalists who are underneath all these color revolutions and all these like movements of people all of a sudden rising up and overthrowing their government, they always replace whoever they're overthrowing with someone that is like supposedly relatable to the people. Usually someone that's like charismatic and is like, oh, he's like younger and he's like nicer, nicer. He's like all that. They always
They
pick
feel
someone
it's
like
like
that.
relatable,
So
like one of us kind of thing, like
yeah, because
voting in a
exactly because if
civilian
it's
almost.
someone who, yeah, exactly, someone who looks good and is like, seems nice, and we can, because then they can say whatever they want and do whatever they want, and we'll take them at face value. That's just like what it is. And the thing about Zelensky, again, he's working with these neo-Nazi groups, and he said he's not gonna 2 weeks ago that he's not gonna observe the Minsk agreement, and the Minsk agreement basically was a guarantee from the Ukrainian government, that the new one that overthrew the previous one in the 2014 coup, that it would stop shooting rockets at innocent civilians in eastern Ukraine who speak Russian, and that it would recognize the autonomy of those regions as long as they stayed in Ukraine.
So wait,
And
he didn't pull
and by
out
the
of the
way, like,
agreement. He's just not keeping his word.
well, no. He's only now admitting what he has been doing for 8 years. So for the last 8 years, you've had these Nazi groups like the Azov Battalion. And by the way, like, a lot of my sources are actually people who live in those eastern Ukrainian regions I've been in contact with over the last few days.
What do these
And what they've been
neo-Nazis
telling
do?
me,
Like, I see they have a flag and they have a uniform, but what do? They go out on the streets and kill people? Do they have like
that,
secret meetings? What do they do?
well, so I'll tell you, they literally they'll just, first of all, they'll shoot rockets into eastern Ukraine, and they'll kill people from that. And it's
So
like
there's
this kind
been
of like
rockets. So there's been rockets from Ukrainians to
constantly
Ukrainians since 2014. No.
yeah, exactly. And that's not even the worst. So that's not even the worst of it. So there was one incident. This was in 2014 in the western Ukrainian city of Odessa. This is in May, so a few months after the revolution happened. Basically, you had a bunch of these. They were mostly women and children, peaceful protesters, who they were protesting because the Ukrainian government, with the support of Zelensky, has been passing all these rules where you can't speak Russian anymore. You, I've like you basically have to just speak Ukrainian. Like they're trying to get rid of like anything Russian in Ukraine. So these people were protesting that. They just wanted the right to speak Russian and celebrate their heritage. 1,000 of these neo-Nazis in with swastikas and stuff stormed in to that area, chased the group of peaceful protesters into a building, set it on fire, and all these people were burning to death. People were jumping out windows, and when they landed on the floor, these Nazis were beating them to death, and the police just stood there and watched.
So the police were supportive,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
they
because
were told you need to let them take reign, or they were genuinely just supportive of this
well,
cause, even though they were legally supposed to stop them.
it's a little bit of both, because also what's significant about World War II is that Ukraine at that time was actually one of the greatest collaborators with the Nazis when they came into World War II. Ukraine actually, in regards to Jews, was, I think, after Lithuania, the next worst country for what they were doing to Jews there during the Holocaust. And there was actually this one guy, he was the ultra nationalist right leader of Ukraine at the time. His name was Stepan Bandera, and he basically, he worked with the Nazis, gave them Jews, massacred Russians and Polish people in Ukraine. And what's really messed up now, this is a girl who lives in the eastern part of Ukraine, she tells me, is that they're toppling statues of Ukrainian historical figures before World War II, like actually like people who
Yes.
brought unity to the country, and they're replacing them with statues of this murderer, Stepan Bandera, and they're also renaming streets. And then they made him a national hero.
So they're trying to
a few years
basically
ago.
erase history in the same way that even I guess BLM riots will take away like previous president statues and things
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
because it's the same tactics used by the globalists. These people do the same shit in every country. They come
What
in,
aim is it
make it look
furthering to do that? To erase
well
history?
because they well, it's not well. It's a big aim because it erases the truth. It erases what actually happened,
and
Like a
instead they're
form of
replacing,
gaslighting, kind
their
of like that never
exactly.
happened.
Well,
You're
they're
imagining it.
erasing. Yeah, yeah, you're crazy. And then in the process of this, they put people loyal to their agenda in the government, and those people, they justify. They say, yeah, like this is why we need to erase history stuff. And the newer generations, because that's the only information they're getting, they believe that. So what's really sad too about this whole conflict in Ukraine is people in Kiev don't even know what's going on in eastern Ukraine. This girl that I've been talking to living in Donetsk,
Yeah.
that's one of the cities in eastern Ukraine. She says that whenever these Nazi groups go in, which is almost on a daily basis, she
What?
takes photos of the buildings. They
In
destroy
her town
the people that,
where she
yeah, in
lives?
her town. She take Yeah, she takes photos of it, sends it to her friends in Kiev, and her friends in Kiev just kind of dismiss it as, oh, those are just some like rednecks, or like those are just stupid people. They don't really know what they're
What?
doing.
What
So
did
the people in
a fringe minority,
Yeah, and
as we
and
say in
and by the
Trudeau?
way, like when I yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. I kind of like when I first started hearing about this, I thought, okay, it's just like one neo-Nazi group in the country. But the more I've done research on this, the more it's like they've infiltrated the whole government and even the
Wow.
military. And just to give
So
you
how
an
many people would
idea,
you
like how
say are?
literally,
Yeah.
well, yeah, how many people is hard to tell, but it's to the point where there's photos from articles from the New York Times and Reuters and other major media outlets. For these articles back in 2014, and in the photos, it's just a bunch of these Nazis with like masks and swastikas holding torches, marching in the street. So if they're that comfortable enough where they can just like march down a major city square doing that, there's probably a good amount of people who maybe necessarily aren't marching with them, but they see that and they're like, whatever, we're okay with it.
Right.
And
As they
this is
say,
like this is
bad things
this
happen
is
not because bad people do bad things, but because good people don't stop it. So not
exactly,
that the
yeah.
good
And
people,
there's
not that
there's
they're good if they're not stopping it, but
yeah, yeah, well, they're just letting it happen. And the U.S. There's multiple articles covering how the U.S. government, even you're gonna find this crazy, but even Israel has been funding and sending weapons to these neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine
wait, why?
because it because Israel and U.S. are close allies, and they are allies in their efforts against Russia. And that's why it sounds crazy when you say it, but there's a whole bunch of articles confirming that they've been funding these groups.
That doesn't even
And
make
it's
sense. Oh
just
my God.
and
Wait,
and
so
but by
when
the way, like once
yeah.
we what I was gonna say, when we get off this call, like I'm more than happy to send you all the sources that I have. Like I
Yeah, no, I
have
believe
them
you.
all like cited in the yeah. So so what were we gonna ask?
I was gonna ask because you told me before this call, you said that actually it might not be such a bad thing that Russia's invading Ukraine, but I hear the
Well,
part that if they're targeting specifically the neo-Nazis, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't look like they are. So are you saying there's a positive
so
aspect to it, but overall it's not good, or what?
so this is what I'll say with that. Invading another country, no matter how corrupt the country is not, you can't justify that.
Yeah.
And uh, there are innocent Ukrainians dying, and that's unacceptable. That's very
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
And my whole thinking was that when once, like, not before, because before, up until like when Putin was on the border and he was going to invade, I wasn't saying he should invade, but when he invaded, I was thinking, okay, he invaded, he should just go to those eastern parts of Ukraine that are ethnically Russian, are being constantly massacred by neo-Nazis in the country, and have even voted back in 2014 to join Russia. So he should just go there, have them incorporate them
So
into
you
Russia,
had your
because
whole
all the people there
fantasy
want that.
plan for Putin to invade in a specific strategic way that you wanted him to invade, but it's not actually what he's doing.
Well,
Like you're saying
I
there's
didn't
an
feel this way
ideal,
until he.
but it's not happening.
Well, my whole thing was, once he invaded, it's like, okay, he's invaded. So hopefully he'll just go, like, because again, before he invaded, I didn't want him, I didn't want him to invade. I didn't think he was going to invade. But once he invaded, I was thinking, okay, like, what's going to be best for everyone is if he just goes to the regions where it's almost completely Russian, and all the people there support him, and there's not going to be like really much bloodshed, but the only people that might die there are the
The ones
Nazis who
against the
support
Russians, right?
the exactly, and that's it. And then he'll
Uh,
leave Kiev alone,
and
and he'll
are
leave
those people
Western
on
Ukraine
the
on.
borders so that once they do that, they don't have to go like too further in and they're already like in the center?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, what you got to understand is that the people in those eastern parts of Ukraine, they voted in 2014 to go into Russia, and the only reason why they weren't incorporated was for some bizarre reason the Kremlin felt they weren't as loyal as Crimea, and that the risks at the time outweighed the benefits, so they just took Crimea, which again is also an ethnically Russian. It's the same situation pretty much as the eastern Ukraine provinces. But ever since then, because the Ukrainian government and Zelensky, they don't want to abide by the Minsk agreement, which is just allowing these people to live in peace. These people have been begging for Russia to have to for them to come in and save them from these Nazi groups. And it's just, I mean, there's another story that it's crazy because you can't use English letters, you have to use Russian letters. But basically, there's this woman. It's called the Gorlevsky Madonna, and this happened recently, or maybe in the last year. But the pictures are online, and it's really sad. There's this 31-year-old woman who she's in the Russian part of Eastern Ukraine, or in Eastern Ukraine, she's a Russian speaker,
Yeah.
and she goes for a walk with her, I guess her 1-year-old baby daughter, and out of nowhere, one of those neo-Nazi battalions comes in, and I don't know if they use guns or if they just used like machetes or something, but they basically cut her legs
Okay,
off. Yeah,
I don't need to
so
know
long
the
story
details.
short, this poor woman. Yeah, so long story short, this poor woman and her baby were killed, and the media in Ukraine said like they were saying, oh no, she's still alive and well. Look at these photos, but I've seen the photos myself of her dead. It's horrible, and that's what the Ukrainian propaganda is, that they'll like the Ukrainians I've talked to who are in Kiev. Whenever I mention this, they're like, "Oh no, that's not happening. There's no massacre. There's no genocide," and it's the same level of denial that you saw with like probably Germans in World War II when people brought up like what was happening to the Jews, or same level of denial that even to this day the Turks have about the Armenian genocide. So it's just these awful things are happening. The government at best in Ukraine is turning a blind eye to it, which I doubt, because they like you have Zelensky literally saying he's not going to abide by an agreement where he's just going to let these people live in peace. And and then that's why I get so angry, because yeah, like we should be outraged by what's happening to the innocent Ukrainians as Russian invades. It's sad, but okay, then no one wants to be outraged about the
Right,
around 14,000
selective
people that have
outrage,
been
basically.
brutally.
But you know what? I don't think it's
Exactly.
people being selectively outraged. I think they're being selectively informed about what to get outraged about, because the fact that you're saying all this thing that happened in 2014, most people are not aware of those things. They're just aware of, the Ukrainian flag that keeps being put in their face everywhere, from mainstream media to protests that are attended by presidents and things like that. And naturally, I mean, you see all these pictures that a lot of them, like you showed me, are actually pictures from a long time ago of like a scene in a movie, or it actually was like a Russian father saying goodbye to his daughter when we thought it was a Ukrainian father. And Zelensky showing him like as a soldier was actually him years ago, inspecting the border and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think like the selective outrage is kind of like that's the point, is that we're supposed to be selectively outraged, not because we get selectively outraged, but because we're given information of what is something worth getting upset about, and we're not even aware. It's crazy. But what's sad is that there's so many people that having not been made aware by the only sources that they trust, which ironically are sources that are so corrupted by like being intertwined with the people that have an agenda, are the ones paying for it. It's like you can't tell them
Mhm.
anything because it's like, oh, who did you hear it from? You just heard it from a human being. You didn't hear it from like a great media outlet. Like, what do you think a media outlet is? It's a bunch of human beings, except it's corrupted by money and things like that. When you hear it from an actual human being walking down the street, they literally saw it with their own eyes. The fact that we can take videos with our iPhones these days, seeing seeing amateur video like that is actually sometimes the best way to get to see what's happening on the
Mhm.
ground, because there's no CGI, like there's no editing, there's no crazy playing with whatever. It's just a simple like blurry iPhone video, and it's from your friend, and you know them and you trust them and you know that that's their
Mhm.
stinky iPhone. Like, it's a pity that it's
Yeah.
I mean, it works. It's a pity that it works for them to convince people, like, don't be upset about that. It didn't happen. Just be upset about what we want you to be upset about. Um, do you think it's
Yeah.
possible to ever convince um someone that's adamant that um like, listen, you don't have to be right wing, you don't have to be conservative, but like, this isn't even about that anymore. It's about human beings, and like, you know what I think that the whole new world order agenda thing, I think it go it happens unchecked for a big part, because and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I think a
Mhm.
big part of it being allowed to go unchecked like this is, and people not believing it, is because it's such a it's so extravagant, and it's almost like a sci-fi movie, that
Mhm.
it makes sense when you have such a crazy plan. It's easy to do it like in front of people's eyes without them believing it, because it's unbelievable. Like,
Mhm.
it's on it's easy to do. Like, if I hide like chocolate from my kids and I put it in like a deep hiding spot, sometimes like they find it because they're thinking she probably hid it and they're looking into deep spots. Sometimes I put it in plain sight and they're like, she's not going to put it in plain sight, so they're not like, they don't look there, they don't assume that like I put it right there inside the bread box or something, because why would I do this? They don't look there. And same thing with like a situation that's so big, they're like, what do you mean? It's such a crazy situation. No one would actually do that. So therefore, I don't believe it. But that's the point, is that they know that you're probably not going to believe it. So it's easy to like do crazy things right in front of your eyes because it's so unbelievable. You don't even believe what you're seeing. I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
Klaus Schwab is saying to your face, there's going to be a new world order, and the amount of power that he has, and then you looking at that and saying, nah, we're fine, it's not going to happen. It's literally middle of happening.
Mhm.
What do you think? What do you say about that situation? Like, I'm a little bit in denial because I want to be,
Well,
but I'm kind of
well,
not.
yeah. I myself, whenever I first hear about these things, I get the same reaction as you. It's like, oh, this is crazy. Like, this sounds like
Yeah,
something out of a movie. How could this be true?
yeah,
But I have this curiosity where, you know what, I want to just, okay, like, if there's information, I'm going to look for it. And, definitely, look, even without research, I'm pretty sure you can tell that over the last 2 years, if what we've seen here just in America, our government and our media is going to lie to us and do try to control us with all the COVID stuff. And people who were being called conspiracy theorists, or just, crazy people who were banished from the conversation early on with COVID,
yeah,
there are things happening right now that they're being vindicated. They're proven right. Of course, the way the government, the media works, they'll never, correct that and say, hey, yeah, we messed up, we were wrong. These people that we censored and deplatformed were actually right, so now we're going to reinstate them. They're not going to do that. But that is what happened. So if and then the U.S. government, like, they did the same thing with Iraq in 2002. We went into this country because there was weapons of mass destruction, and there was no weapons of mass destruction. Like, the only thing that ended up happening was we might have killed like one or like some small groups of people who worked with terrorists here and there, but then we just ended up occupying this country. A bunch of our soldiers were getting killed, a bunch of the locals were getting killed, and it was just really tragic. Same thing happened in Afghanistan.
What
And
what would Trump
all
have
these
done
things
in
were
the end
supported.
with what would Trump have done in the end rather than the crazy thing that Biden did, which was to pull them out, leave all their weapons for the terrorists, leave all their
Well, so
service dogs.
right. Well, here's what I'll say. I agree we needed to pull out. I think Trump he would have done it in a better way. He would have, because Afghanistan, that was nothing we could ever win. But what we could have done, we could have pulled out in a way where our people over there would have been safe, and it wouldn't just been this crazy shit show where you have people like tying themselves to airplanes and falling off because they're so desperate to get out of the country. It would have been that. And I mean, look, the truth is the Taliban inevitably would have taken over because no matter what we did there, the Afghan army that we propped up just was they weren't prepared to fight the Taliban once we left because they knew that these people
Why
would
didn't we
just
just
come after
wipe
them,
why
kill
didn't we
them.
just like wipe them out instead of standing by with gun, like from pictures that I saw, I mean it's just pictures, so it's a still, but it seems almost like they were just standing guard in random civilian places with huts and children running barefoot and just standing there and like guarding and watching. Why didn't they like go and aggressively like wipe out? I mean, they have bombs, they have pretty expensive ammunition, as Trump would always taunt that he had. Why didn't they just
Yeah,
use it on them? Would it have caused them enemies they didn't want to have? Or I mean, they were anyways occupying it.
well, I mean, that's pretty much what we have been doing in Afghanistan, and it just never worked. It's like, yeah, you bomb this cave with this terrorist, or you blow up this hut in this village, and you kill a guy. But guess what? In the process, you kill some innocent civilians, like some poor guy who had nothing to do with this, sees his family get blown up by a U.S. drone. He's devastated. He's lost everything,
And now he joins the
and the only
Taliban.
thing he has left. Yeah, yeah. Well, because it's
Oh
a,
wow.
and I'm not saying I'm not saying that's right. I'm not like the Taliban. They are, they're a terrorist group. They don't exactly care about human rights, but it's like when the U.S. like we do this in every Middle Eastern country. Like like same thing in Yemen right now. Like we're bombing these poor people who just really have no defense against our technology. They're getting killed. Our media and our government saying, "Oh, it's because we need peace and stability. It's to fight these terrorists." And then what happens is that in the process of doing this, we create more terrorists. These terrorists come, and then the government goes, see, we have all these terrorists, so we need to do more of this. And it's just this vicious cycle that continues. And
Oh wow.
that's just like a mini example.
So
That's like a
would
mini example of what.
education, like starting from grassroots, like would that be a way to infiltrate in like an actual like healing it by the source, where you're kind of offering the people, like you say, they're causing more victims that end up being angry and using their aggression towards them if they do the opposite, such as like to take these orphans or these people or whatever and give them education where they're not being indoctrinated to hate, um and also providing them, with the fact that they're providing them with it with education, which is priceless, like a school or whatever. Do you think that that would make any difference? Or
It could help a little bit here and there, but at the end of the day, the absolute best thing we could do is
yeah,
just stop all this shit. Like the reason why 9/11 happened, and this is like really unpopular I mean, this is really unpopular in the early 2000s, but hopefully, it's something we can actually talk about is, yes, Osama bin Laden, he was a terrorist. He was wrong what he did. That's
yeah.
absolutely disgusting, killing all those innocent people, and doing that. But you know why he did it? Because the U.S. had been building bases in Saudi Arabia. And in his proclamation in the 90s, where he's denouncing the U.S. and saying that he's going to declare a jihad against them, he specifically says the U.S. has been building bases and bombing, quote unquote, the Holy Land. And it's like right there. Again, he shouldn't have done what he did. That was
Okay,
wrong.
but why did they
And
build
I'm glad
bases
that
there? They built bases there because there's freaking terrorists everywhere.
that's the propaganda they tell you whenever the military needs to get away with doing something in another country, especially this halfway around the world. They just say, "Oh, there's terrorists there. They're going to
But
do
why
this
does
thing,
everything
so
have
we
to be
need all this military."
corrupt? can't there be some good people that are actually like, okay, we need to go there and fight terrorists? Like, is that not possible? That there are people with that
Well,
agenda?
there were, well, look, it's really sad, and I hate having this pessimistic view, but at the highest levels, the government is corrupted. They're working with, if they're not working with globalists like the Obamas, Clintons, George Soros, who, by the way, the Obamas and Clinton, the left,
Wait, I can't hear you. You got cut off for a second.
can you hear me now?
Yeah. The Obamas and the Clintons
Yeah.
of the left. What did you say about that?
Yeah, the Obamas and Clintons, they're on the left, but they also support this whole policy of bombing these peace-loving, or not peace-loving, these innocent civilians in these Middle Eastern countries, because at the end of the day, the right and the left, the one thing that they can agree on is expanding the military-industrial complex and all the profits that come from wars, and also expanding this like U.S. imperialistic hegemony all around the world, and that's just what they do, and they'll use whatever excuse they can to do it. There are some good people, maybe in lower levels, definitely a lot of soldiers who don't necessarily want to do this, but they're not getting the information they need to get. I guess like someone high up who is really good, I'd say, is Douglas MacArthur. Not Douglas MacArthur. Sorry, Douglas McGregor. That's his name. He was. Have you heard of him?
Your
He was on
video,
Tucker
your
Carlson
video
the other
paused
night.
again, but it's fine. Your video paused again.
Yeah,
Oh, there you are.
Well, I'm pretty sure you've heard. I'm pretty sure you've heard of Douglas McGregor, but he basically, his whole take, like everything I just said about how the U.S. shouldn't have been involved in the Middle East, like that's his whole take. He's a former U.S. general, and he was actually on Tucker Carlson last night. I don't watch Fox. I hate Fox, but Tucker Carlson's the one guy on Fox like I respect, and he had points, and he had Douglas MacArthur back on. And Douglas MacArthur was just giving his take right now on the current Russia-Ukraine situation. And he said he pretty much said the same thing, that this all happened because the U.S. backed a coup in 2014 in Ukraine to overthrow a government to replace the U.S. And at the same time, the U.S. has also been exporting.
You're getting cut off.
But you can still hear me, right?
Now I can, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Douglas McGregor, he said it was because of what we did with the 2014 coup in Ukraine, and then
why didn't they stage a coup in like with the truckers? Why didn't they do that for Trudeau to overthrow him? Why didn't they overthrow him? So many truckers, just get rid of him.
Well, because first of all, that's actually a grassroots movement. That's not. There's no government. It's interesting. You notice that there are certain protests the government will support, like BLM, because it's the people there, like in BLM, they're crying out for a bigger federal government. A government that's going to be like going after the racists and censoring more speech and serving their agenda. So the government will, of course, support a protest like that. But when you have an actual grassroots protest where people are against the COVID mandates, against government overreach, well, then the full fangs of the government police state are going to come out, and they're going to, and the media, of course, is going to label a bunch of truckers who aren't just white, are black, brown, gay, Hispanic, or gay, lesbian, like everything. They're going to label them. Yeah, they're going to label them as just white supremacists who are racist and also don't care about COVID and want to kill people. And then at the same time, they'll have the police out there doing
and ironically infiltrate with masked Antifa, which is so obvious because they're literally wearing the exact thing that every single trucker there is completely against wearing. So, I get that it's cold. So there's that. So maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. It looks to me like it makes sense that it's an infiltration because they don't show their identity whenever they're like one lone person holding a Nazi flag, and then the media is just focusing in on them and not showing the crowd behind them, which is showing the complete opposite belief. Doesn't shoot. It doesn't.
Yeah. So that's what the government does internally. They choose which kinds of protests and movements they support. Although most of the movements they support are not grassroots ones. I mean, they might have some random people getting in because there are people who just aren't informed and want to be good, kind people, because we all want to do that, but they don't realize what they're getting into. And then you have actual protests of people who are just sick and tired of, or like all the parents in school board meetings who are against teaching critical race theory and stuff like that. It's like they literally call those parents terrorists, and it's like you're telling me that sweet mom in like her late 30s who just wants her kids to have a good education.
They're wasting their
is
time on the wrong enemy. By the way, I'm just like one small person in among hundreds of millions in America, but like I feel that it would be such a good idea, like as far as how to get a president that's not corrupt. In general with politics, the way that it works is they have to have enough money and enough backing and enough, like they're kind of already intertwined with so many things because they have enough power already just to run for office in the first place. Also, they're choosing to run for office, so they're kind of like choosing themselves. So by nature, someone that chooses themselves to run for office has to at least be a little bit of like a power hungry individual, because obviously there are so many people that want to make a change, but as far as like being the president of the United States and choosing yourself for that, it's a little bit of like an ego run. Oh, your video is paused. Oh, there you are. Okay, it's a little bit of like you got frozen on like your like rolling your eyes, so you look like you're okay, so I have such a hard time concentrating now. Can you unroll your eyes, please? Oh my
I mean,
God.
they're believe me, they're unrolled. It's just
okay, it's fine. I mean, okay, now you're stuck smiling, so it's better. So so anyway, I just like by nature with the with the process, it's so funny, stuck smiling with the with the process that it is right now, you're inevitably attracting someone that's power hungry because the process is done through which the person chooses themselves in the first place. Obviously, then you have democratic voting system, which if it wasn't corrupt is fair and it helps. But I feel like in the first place, that not just that the people should be voting on the people that chose themselves to run. I feel like people should be nominated by the people. Like literally, there should be just a ton of people nominated until they narrow it down to the people that, okay, now you're going to get voted on because after we chose all the nominations, now we have to vote on the nominations. So like, then we narrow it down to like, okay, who are the two competitors or whatever, like kind of like we do, but just not that someone votes for themselves. Because once you have that, now it's already like you're already muddied the waters. You're already by definition, like usually someone that wants to do good so badly and is like, no, not me, it's fine, I don't want to be the president, but I think you need to do, like, that's who needs to be the president. Like a real leader is someone that wants to make a difference but doesn't care to have that status, to be in that position. They just know what to do. Like they're a doer. They're not necessarily like they want to be the face of a campaign or whatever. So you can have a combination of both. Like, for example, I believe that Trump is the malignant narcissist. However, he's done so much for the country, and like he might be power hungry, but he gets the job done. So you can have a combination of both. But by nature, like someone that's corrupt is corrupt, and it would be so nice if we could have like just let the people choose. But honestly, that might make like some pretty extreme fights, because I can just imagine Jewish people like wanting someone that's like this, and Nazis wanting someone like that's like that, and left and right and whatever. So I don't know how that would work exactly, but I feel like to not attract power hungry individuals.
Well, my whole thing is I wish, like we could get a president that just was good, like you said, strong, made everyone happy, and then we could just keep getting a president like that one after the other. But fortunately, the probability of that is so low. And really what the issue comes down to is that the federal government has just gotten insanely big. In the last few years, it's monumental because now it's gone from just having all these like foreign wars and expanding the U.S. internationally to now trying to control like every aspect of our life, like what we say, what our beliefs are, our medical status. So,
Yeah.
you're not going to get anywhere with this idea that you can just somehow get someone good in the federal government and they're going to make everything better because, Trump, as good, like he wasn't perfect. He was better because he was egotistical enough to just do what he wanted and go against the grain of the federal government. But you saw what happened. He got in there and the federal government just tied his hands completely. And
Yeah.
there were some good things he got done, but there was a lot of stuff he couldn't get done because he was either surrounded by inept people or he just, the government has hands tied. And unfortunately, he was bold, but he didn't have an intellectual understanding enough of how to, win a lot of these
I mean, he
arguments
probably
and how
didn't
to like
also didn't
navigate.
have the right. I mean, he had plenty of connections, but he probably also didn't have enough connections with all of the corrupt people in the sense of,
Yeah,
the people that helped him not win for the second time with all of the
yeah.
corruption in that sense. But you said you're a libertarian. So does that mean you're not a conservative, or that just means you're not a Republican, or you're what?
Well, I'm right now. I'm in a I'm in a transition phase. I mean, I've always been a libertarian in the
Mm.
sense that I just, when it comes to like LGBTQ stuff, I was like, yeah, like people want to be gay or lesbian or be transgender, by all means, like, it's their choice as long as they're not physically hurting anyone or
Your video paused again.
like really
Oh,
being
there you go.
aggressive.
Yeah.
As long as they're not being like aggressive or harming anyone in that process, that should be their choice.
Wait, so
And that was like one
you
thing I
changed
disagreed
on that
with.
stance? You changed on
No,
that
no, I
stance,
haven't
or
changed on that.
oh, okay. Okay.
No, I haven't. Like I'm saying, like I kind of always was, but I would vote Republican because my family coming from a communist country, anything the Democrats offer always sounded like it was at some level like on the road to communism.
Why is it that
And
Democrats are not are the last promoters of democracy? Isn't it the same word? I never understood that.
well, it's
Like
by design.
socialism, Bernie
The left,
Sanders, like it's confusing.
yeah. Well, the thing is like the actual Democratic Party itself changed dramatically. Like if we were talking about the
Uh-huh.
Democrat
Okay.
Party from the 1960s with JFK, by all means, I respect him. And if we had the party like that today and they had someone good, I'd vote for him. But
What is what is a
the
republic as opposed to like why is it called Republicans?
well, Republicans they actually evolved it was in the late 1700s, early 1800s. They were initially called Democratic Republicans, or maybe I have it backwards and that's how Democrats involved, whatever. But Republicans, their whole thing was that they wanted to have more individual rights, more about states' rights, a smaller federal government. I guess like where they can really trace their lineage back is to the Jeffersonian version of democracy, where it's pretty much like a bunch of small republics cooperating and working together. And Democrats, on the other hand, they at the time they were probably the Federalists, who, as the name implies, they wanted a larger federal government. And
Which makes sense also that they're
that's what it comes
closer
down.
to globalism because the bigger the better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because from globalists to the people who are just on the left and like want all the woke stuff, like what it comes down to is they have this immature belief that, oh, if we just control everyone, then all the evil in the world will be gone.
Control
Or if we
comes
can
from
just
fear. I feel like these people are so afraid. Like if you don't put a mask on your 2-year-old, they're so petrified that they're going to die from your 2-year-old who's not even sick. And they're so scared that they're literally trying to control you. And it's that same fear that drives all of this crazy control. Like
exactly.
people literally just need therapy. I don't know. Or they're beyond therapy at this point.
Yeah,
I got yelled at for
I
my
agree.
2-year-old not wearing a mask, and it was just preposterous. Besides the fact that even though all of like my other two kids got COVID, I got COVID. He was the only one that, like, if he got it, he was asymptomatic. And it's probably because he was nursing, because of all of the antibodies that are only found in a mother's milk. And it's just miraculous and it's
Mhm.
insane. And to think that you're going to catch it from my baby, who has been like the most immune child I've ever seen, like, you need to chill out. Like, he hasn't sneezed, he hasn't coughed, he hasn't tested positive. The mask doesn't even fit on his little face. Like, we're
Yeah.
it makes me crazy. I can't handle it. And I haven't gone on a plane since 2020 because I see way too many stories of parents getting kicked off because their 2-year-old won't wear a mask, or their 2-year-old wore the mask but took it
Oh
down to
yeah.
take their bottle. And I just don't understand, like, who is hiring these stewardesses that the only thing they care about is like looking for a baby that doesn't have a diaper on their face. Like, it just it's I don't know why there hasn't been an airline that's been created from all of this that's like, you can come on my plane with no mask and no vaccine and sit where you want, and I'm not afraid that you're going to breathe on me. I will take care of myself, you take care of yourself. Like, I'm not in charge of you. Like, why has there not been, there's been so many people kicked off of planes, why hasn't someone come and, like, I know it costs millions billions of dollars, but I feel like someone needs to come and make their own airline for all of these people that get kicked off of planes for no reason. Because we're all like, okay, I'm boycotting that airline, I'm boycotting that airline, but it's all the airlines at the end of the day. Like, it's all of them. Who are we kidding?
Yeah.
You want to boycott
Well, I'll tell
this
you
airline,
why.
it's going to be the other one. They're all
I'll tell
losers.
you why. It's because it's because of the federal government. Because
And they
all
have
these
like a
airlines,
union or
they
something.
are well, yeah, they are private entities, but that's like what the sneaky federal government's even done in recent months, like with all these vaccine mandates, is that they said, oh, like we're not even going to put out a mandate, but we're gonna work through
Incentives.
federal regulation. Yeah, and we're going to pretty much through federal regulation put pressure on these companies to enforce these policies. So even if someone were to create one of their own airline that was cool and like wasn't forcing you to wear masks and stuff,
Yeah.
the federal government at some point, like especially that airline was making a lot of money, they'd come in and they'd put the regulations. So all the problems go back to the federal government. They do. That's that's just what it is. Is this monster of a government's gone so big that it's wants to control every aspect of our lives, and if you try to question it, they'll shut you down, deplatform you. As we saw in Canada, they'll freeze your bank accounts,
That's scary.
make it
Did they
extremely
unfreeze them
hard.
yet? Did they unfreeze them yet?
I haven't, I haven't, I haven't heard about it. And it's funny that our media right now is just, I don't know if those protests in Canada are even still going on. I mean, I'm assuming they are,
By the way,
but the media is just completely ignoring.
is the quality of the dollar going to go down because we took away the Swift
Oh yeah,
banking system for Russia? Like, it's actually not going to help us. It's actually going to slap us in the face after.
well, Russia, they're going to blame the fact that we're having all this hyperinflation and that the dollar is losing value already. They're just going to blame that on Russia and Ukraine. But it's something that's already happening. And that was one of the bad things that Trump did, unfortunately, was that he approved all the massive spending. He continued it that the federal government had been doing under Obama and Bush and all the previous presidents, rather than just stopping it altogether. He just kept it going. And
He kept
I mean,
which
it's
thing going?
boring. He kept the federal spending and printing of more money, which is causing the inflation we're
Oh,
seeing right now. He know if he increased the spending. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he increased it
wait, is
instead of
crypto is
decreasing it. And
so why did the stock markets go up when he was president?
well, because it's artificial. Like the stock markets, I have to like remember exactly how it was phrased, but it's just the stock markets still go up, and the economy was doing better, but it was still like part of this artificial bubble because of all this money that's being printed. And it's just a simple principle: when you print a shitload of money, like I mean, our government's been printing like millions a day, maybe even billions. You print that much money, the money eventually is just going to lose its value because it's just there's so much of it.
So can you
And
explain
I'm,
why it would affect us and our currency to remove Russia from the SWIFT banking system?
I honestly don't think it would make a difference. I think thinking that you're going to just do something like removing a foreign country from some kind of banking system without addressing the insane military spending and printing of money that's going on in our country. It's just it's not going to do anything. I mean, there might be like a little bit of a benefit. Although I don't know exactly what it would be, but
Do you think
assuming there,
Biden left behind all of the ammunition to the Taliban, even though they destroyed some of it after, but on purpose because Trump put so much money into it, and it was almost like, that feeling of you built a building and someone just knocked it all down, but also part of the globalist agenda, it didn't really fit their agenda to give us that much military power, and they kind of had to ruin it, and this was their way of doing it in like a oops way.
well, maybe. I mean, I'll be honest. I think Biden's just an old man with
No,
dementia,
not him, like
who's
whoever's behind him.
oh yeah.
Hyena Kamala
I mean,
Harris or
whoever's
Klaus Schwab or whoever that. By the
yeah,
way,
yeah,
how does sorry, I'm
yeah,
so
yeah. I mean,
ADHD. How does Klaus Schwab, like, who even is he? Like, how does he have money? How does he have power? He's just like some German old man that wrote a book. Like, he's part of the
the World Economic Forum.
yeah the WEF,
Yeah,
the
he
NWO, and the WHO.
he's like
How did he get where he is?
I have to do more research on him, but to me, he strikes me as a similar George Soros type character because it's like it's always this like creepy old guy with some European accent who's just like, oh, we're going to unite the world under one government, and it's just
I
and they
don't
just kind
understand.
of come
He's
out of
about to
nowhere.
die. How does he have so much? Like, where
Well,
does this
well,
drive for life
look,
come from? Like, he's dying tomorrow. What does he care so much? Like, just go to your nursing home and drink your smoothie.
he's the age of these people tells you that these people have been doing what they're doing for literally their whole lives. And what they've been doing is that they've been amassing wealth from the support of
Where does Klaus Schwab get his wealth?
Well, I don't know where he gets individually, but if you have like our federal government that it serves its interests to work with globalists, it's probably gonna send money to globalists, or it's gonna finance their, like look with the Clintons and they had this like charity organization, or you like with the Bidens, they got Burisma in Ukraine. And that's another reason why Ukraine is especially important to the globalists, is because that whole country is their money laundering operation. So they basically, through working with corrupt governments and like getting and working and
saying like
putting
with
their
what
people
happened
like on
with Hunter.
yeah, like that whole process. That's how these people get rich. They make these deals with these governments, and then to like hide it, to make like I mean it's still obvious to us, but they'll just like put someone in their family or even themselves on the boards of these companies, and they'll get a cut of the pay from these companies, and then they'll also maybe get money from the governments in those countries. And and then there's like also like all these like groups that you can't really like, they have their names like listed online, but you can't exactly figure out who's in those groups, but they're like funding them. And it's like the mafia, like how does the mafia get rich? Well, they have all this corrupt stuff going on, money laundering right under people's noses, and that's what this is, except it's on a global scale with countries.
I don't even understand what money laundering is, but I did once have one of those scam calls where it was some Indian guy, and I decided that I'm gonna, you know what? He wants to scam me. I'm gonna scam him. So he called me and he was like, ma'am, you are money laundering and you are in big trouble, but I can help you. And I was like, oh no, did I put my money in my washing machine? And he was like, yes. And I'm like, oh no, I need to take it out of the dryer. And he goes, yes, and the police, they're underway and they're going to arrest you. And I was like, oh no, I better take it out of the dryer fast. And he literally, like, he was going along with all of it. It was so funny. It was amazing. Definitely
Oh my God, that's great.
your money laundering calls, because they really deserve, if anyone deserves to be scammed, it's the scammers. I'll call your house. You want to call my house? I'll call your house. By the way, I'm really random. Crypto, is that a way to save your money, or it's an illusion? Because like Klaus Schwab was saying, we're gonna have, like, COVID is gonna look like nothing compared to the unprecedented cyber attack that's gonna happen. Like, what is that? When he warns about these things that are probably gonna happen, does that mean he's making it happen the same way Bill Gates is like, we're gonna have a vaccine, and puts money into a patent
Oh
on the vaccine, and then, oh look, what a coincidence. The thing I put a patent on became an epidemic and became a pandemic, and tries to drag it on, because the more it drags on, the more money they get. Like, it is I lost my train of thought completely, but I was asking about crypto, if it's worth putting your money into, or if that's part of, like, if there's a cyber attack, isn't crypto something that's in the cyber world? So doesn't that get affected? Like, it's scary, because even if you have just the physical dollar, so you're like, okay, they can't freeze my bank accounts, I have the physical dollar. But if the value of the dollar goes down because of World War III or whatever's imminent, the Swift banking or whatever it is, then, so it doesn't help to have the physical dollar, because what if the value goes down? It doesn't help to have it in the banking system, because if you, God forbid, give money to a trucker, now your bank account is frozen, you can't go buy milk. And if you put it in crypto, like, is that going to be done from, like, the cyber attack, or what? Like, do you have any hope of saving your money in this type of situation? Like, do you invest it in real estate? What do you do?
Yeah, well, real estate and solid assets in the real world, I think, are always the best. I mean, excluding the dollar, of course, but crypto, from what I've been hearing, I know very little about crypto, but it's something I'm definitely going to start getting into more. So from what I know, it's hard, very hard for certain crypto, like Ethereum, and maybe there's this other one, Hex. Is for those ones, it's really hard for the government to do any kind of meddling. I'm not sure about cyber attacks,
What
but
about,
it's
like,
like is
Dogecoin?
the reason why. What about what?
Dogecoin?
Oh, Dogecoin.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't know. I hear all these different crypto names. All I do know is that it can be an alternative. The government is also, as these things are coming out, I'm sure it's like looking at how it can start getting in and manipulating them. But the ones that I think, again, it's either it's Ethereum, and then there's another one like Hex. My friend, like, he's always posting new stories about them, and those, like, the ones supposedly they're like are the best, like, guaranteed to not have the government get in there and start, like, trying to screw it in, like, create some kind of inflation, because it's like very strictly regulated by, like, the company itself that created that cryptocurrency. And there's just like they stress that there's only a finite amount of it in the world, and that so no government can come in there and just start creating a bunch more of it and causing inflation. But again, I don't know
But
how
I don't
these
mean
things would do it.
creating more of it. I mean, can they shut it down? In other words, like when you have something saved electronically, it's scary in the sense that if that electronic breaks, if that whatever is in the cyber universe is malfunctioning, and, like, literally internally you can't get to it, like, then your money's gone. It disappears to thin air. No?
So a single area, they have ways.
Your audio is, like, completely. Maybe try again. I don't know.
Is it right now?
For now.
Yeah, yeah. It's all that still exists in a certain.
Ironically, you sound like a cyborg right now. I can't really hear much of what you're saying, but maybe try one more time.
No?
Somewhat.
The the cryptocurrency, it all still goes to like a central server. So even if there's like some kind of like outage, like with your phone or even on a larger scale, then that money is still like, it's not like it just disappears, like it's there.
So I don't mean a
So
hardware outage. I mean a software like hacking outage, like to hack
right. From what I've
their
heard,
hardware.
there's like they have special technology where like the way the whole system for crypto work for certain crypto companies, the way it works is just it's protected against that. It's not even like just as simple as firewalls. It's like some like really complex technologies and processes. So I really crypto is like the one thing I've been putting off getting more in depth about because it just kind of doesn't seem as exciting as like the things that are going on in our world right now. But
Yeah.
definitely it is something definitely to consider. Other than if you just don't feel like buying gold or buying real estate, and it is no one yet is certain like how cryptocurrency, like even the most secure one, is going to do if there is like some massive cyber attack. So
Even the most secure one
that's just like
is
where we're
gonna
at with
break
it.
if it is gonna be infiltrated if there's a massive
Well,
cyber attack, you think?
no one knows. No one knows. I mean, again, these things like it's not just these things like are pretty sophisticated and complicated. It's not just like some like uh net like Facebook or something that someone can just hack into. And even then, Facebook already is like pretty complicated. So it's just it's just hard to say because we don't know how sophisticated the cyber attacks are going to be. So maybe with like low level cyber attacks, it might be fine. Nothing's going to
Do you
happen.
think there will be
But then,
cyber attacks? Like he's not just speculating?
oh, well, yeah. I mean, look, anything that comes out of the mouths of these globalist pigs like the Bill Gates, Carl Schwab, George Soros, the Clintons, like it's
Who?
just
Sorry,
they just
who's George Soros? I hear of him all the time. Like, where does he come in?
so George Soros,
Where
he
does he get his
basically
money?
is an investor.
Okay.
It's really hard because he's amassed it over the years. He's, I guess, somehow amassed it through like his charitable organizations. But he basically is a guy who he invests like tens of thousands of dollars in like these corrupt district attorneys in states across the U.S. to get them in the positions they're in, so they can start just causing chaos and mayhem with their trash policies and just letting criminals run around and cause like kill people when get released like the next day
Yeah.
basically. And then he also funds organizations like the Open Borders that basically erode the national borders of a country. And now, of course, like he's tweeting in support of Ukraine. So that's a pretty good rule actually people can go by. It sounds stupid, but actually works pretty well. Whatever the media, the tech oligarchs like Mark Zuckerberg and people at Twitter, Jack Dorsey's gone, but there's like other terrible people with them now. And then these globalists like George Soros and Bill Gates, whatever they're supporting, support the opposite of that.
Yeah. At this point.
So that's how it is. And and again, bringing it back to Ukraine real quick, I'm not saying that means we're just going to support Russia 100%. But the way I see it, you can you can support the innocent Ukrainian people who are caught in the crossfire right now, while at the same time refusing to accept the same uh, accept the same information we're getting from the same people who are pushing the COVID lies and all this other stuff on us for the
And
last few
also
years.
supporting the innocent
That's
Russian civilians that are caught in the crossfire as well and are
Russian.
getting arrested for sharing. I mean, I
That's
saw a video of like a grandmother screaming when she was being dragged away by police. This poor grandmother, what was her crime? She held up a banner that was saying like that they don't want any war, they want peace. Like, this is who is filling their jails. Like, it sounds like they're in the Soviet Union again. I mean, how is this happening? I thought the Iron Curtain was like broken. I thought it was done. Like, I'm confused,
well,
honestly.
this isn't well,
Like, is this
like
new or this was
Putin
happening this
contrary.
whole time?
Well, look, this is something that's always been happening in Russia. Like, again, Putin's no saint. He's got a corrupt government. He's stayed in power because he's really good at suppressing opposition the minute it comes up. But at the same time, what you have to understand is that like as you've seen from all the stuff I've been sending you about Ukraine, a lot of this footage that we get, we oftentimes don't know the full context. It could be footage that came from something else. Those people could be crisis actors, kind of like how Antifa infiltrates certain things. I'm not saying that old lady was. She could have very well been an old lady, like that's possible. But, you have to ask these questions because I'll tell you one thing. I was really good about a lot, like resisting, like questioning a lot of images that were coming out of, I mean, yeah, like, again, for anyone who's listening to this, yes, the Russians are invading. I'm not saying that's fake. And it's sad for the Ukrainians who are suffering as a result of it. But a lot of the images we were getting, I was questioning. But the one image that I saw that I thought, holy shit, this is like something really messed up that the Russians did, was this footage supposedly of a Russian tank driving over a civilian vehicle. And then they were,
And in the end,
they
it was
came to it.
actually a
Luckily, the old
Ukrainian
man's
tank. Yeah.
it was a Ukrainian missile defense system. And that actually, that
Why?
coincides with
Why
something
did
that,
they? Why did he drive over him? Was it by accident? Was it on purpose?
well,
Since
it
Ukrainian
was
over
by
a Ukrainian.
accident.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, it was accident. It was like the same thing. Something else that happened in the media didn't report. This I'm getting from like someone who lives in Ukraine, was that the Ukrainians shot a missile at. They're trying to hit a Russian target. Instead, I don't know if this was in Kiev or some other city in Ukraine. They accidentally hit a Ukrainian senior home that blew it up, and they blamed it on the Russians. They said, "Oh, look at the Russians are heartless monsters. They're blowing up senior homes." So it's just,
And it was by accident, you
again,
said?
yeah, it was by accident. So, it's like the thing is like with this whole invasion in Russia, yes, like the Russians invaded. There are casualties from Ukraine for Ukrainians, but at the same time, the Ukrainian government is lying, and they're never gonna. They're doing all this stuff, and anytime they make an accident, they kill their own civilians. They blame it on the Russians, and then our media and our government,
Takes it and runs
because
with it. Yeah.
you being pro, yeah, because it serves their interest in the agenda of globalists, and then everyone on Instagram, just falls for it, eats it up. And just like with the COVID narrative way back in the beginning of it, if you question that, then automatically you're a Putin puppet, you're a
Yeah.
pro-Russian fascist or whatever
Do you think
term.
it's no coincidence that they went from suddenly no mask mandates and no more vaccine mandates and boom, the war, like it's kind of like, okay, next phase, like they say in those memes of the new world order, like, okay, we're on to the next
And the
phase
next distraction,
of
yeah,
fear mongering. We don't need that other fear mongering tactic. We're on to a bigger thing now.
yeah. Well, here's what it comes down to. Putin doing what he did, that wasn't like, he's not working with the globalists. He just went and decided to invade Ukraine. So it's not like that was
Right,
part of their
right.
plan. And it did,
I feel like
but when
Putin
it,
is
but
like, he doesn't give a crap. Like, he's like, you do your thing. I'm not afraid of globalists. I'm not afraid of my citizens. I'm not afraid of anyone. Like, if it wasn't real, he's hilarious.
yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
not
Well,
funny at all,
they
but
hate,
he's just
they hate him for the same reason that they hated Trump, because he's a strong anti-globalist person who isn't gonna play their little game.
except
So
Trump wants
because they
his
can
people to be
manipulate.
free and Putin doesn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, Putin's not like Trump is better than Putin.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Putin's a corrupt individual. So, like we just see that these people who they were screaming about, follow the science, masks, vaccines, this is like the most important thing. The minute this thing breaks out, they just boom, flip a switch and pivot to the next thing. And that tells you that all their rhetoric about caring about the COVID pandemic and stuff like that, they didn't really care. They just, for them, it's like on to the next thing. And and they get more and more desperate every time with every single thing, because they already know that most people don't trust them. I mean, unfortunately with this Ukraine stuff, like, yeah, it's happening. So there are more people who magically they're trusting the same media outlets that were lying about COVID literally a few weeks ago, and they're attacking you if you question it. But there's still like that's less people than there would have been like 4 or 5 years ago, because everyone just knows, most people know at this point the media is it's dishonest. And look, the thing about the invasion of Ukraine too is that if Putin real like what is happening when no one else is talking about is that Putin, he's he's not going and just killing Ukrainian civilians. What he's doing is he's targeting U.S. funded biolabs in locations across Ukraine,
Really?
military, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, military targets
Why are they in
and
Ukraine?
military
Why are
bases.
US funded biolabs in Ukraine? Was there smart
Well,
Ukrainian doctors
because
there or something?
no, because those are biological weapons meant to be used against Russia.
Oh, well that's a big
So,
deal.
so like
Wow.
look, when Putin like targets the biolab or targets, let's say, a military base, it's not like he has super precise missiles. They're just going to hit the like. Unfortunately,
But
if
also, he
there's
probably
civilians
doesn't
next to those
mind
places,
inciting more fear and killing more civilians so that he incites more fear so that he can infiltrate more easily with whatever targets he does have.
well, his like I don't think he even cares about instilling fear. His primary objective is to ensure that Ukraine doesn't fall into NATO and pose a security threat to Russia. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And unfortunately, that means at the expense of all these innocent civilians. That's what it is. He doesn't really care about instilling if he does care about instilling fear, it's for the world to respect Russia and to stop with pushing NATO right up to Russia's doorstep. Because it's like people are saying, oh yeah,
Basically,
like
they
we
want to
need
keep they want
NATO.
to
Like
keep their nuclear power through like inciting intimidation to other people that they won't want to threaten them like, hey, you need to remove your nuclear power um because they're not afraid enough to not ask them, basically.
yeah, well, I'll put it to you like this.
Yeah.
The U.S. what they've been trying to do with Ukraine, getting it into NATO, and that's the thing too. Ukraine's not even in NATO, but the U.S. is already acting like it's in NATO by putting military bases, biolabs in there.
I thought
They're pretty much.
Ukraine pulled out of they agreed to the US's request to pull out of having nuclear power and um on the
Yeah,
basis
yeah,
that
and
America agreed to fight for them if Russia attacked them, which they're not keeping their end of the deal,
no,
and
well,
now Ukraine
there
is left
wasn't.
defenseless.
Well, no, there was never a formal agreement like that. At least
Uh-huh.
not one that like where Ukraine was formally. If there was a formal agreement, Ukraine would be part of NATO already, but there wasn't. And then, like I said earlier, 2 weeks ago, Zelensky went to this Munich security conference, and he straight up said, like, Ukraine, we're gonna start putting nukes in Ukraine. So Russia's just seeing this, and it's pretty much like the Cuban Missile Crisis for Russia. Like this country that's right at their border, that's got a government that the U.S. put in there that's going to be friendly to them, has U.S. funded biolabs, U.S. military bases. They're going to start building their own nukes, which they're probably going to be pointed at Russia, not at the U.S. So the Russians, they just go, okay, enough's enough. Like this is a security threat to us. I'm not saying like that justifies an invasion, that they should try diplomacy, but that's like that's why this stuff happened, and that's why like you can't look at what's happening in Ukraine right now and just like look at it as like, oh, it's just Putin being power hungry. It's like
Surface
no,
level
this is
attacking.
because the U.S. Yeah, the U.S. backed a coup in 2014 of the democratically elected government in Ukraine just so they could put someone that's their puppet in there, and as a result of that, so they can then like start putting more U.S. military and weapons into Ukraine. That's gonna so they can intentionally
So
target
1 second,
Russia.
is America is the US using Ukraine as like they're kind of what's the word when you frame, like they're framing them basically as like, okay,
Yeah,
they're the bad guys, giving the impression to Ukraine, oh, we're your friends, let us come in, let us infiltrate, put their bioweapons lab and all of that, and then use those
yeah,
weapons lab against Russia in the name of Ukraine because it's in Ukraine, or no?
yeah. Well, yeah, no. You actually got it almost right. It's
Mm.
yeah. I mean that's pretty much what it is. They do put Ukraine in this position and it's not just the U.S. It's like, from NATO too. They put this Ukraine in this position, knowing full well that this issue is going to happen.
But
and then
why,
when
if you and
Russia
I know
eventually
this, why are Ukrainian government officials not opposed to something that simpletons will know? That and it's to their
because because the Ukrainian government's in on it. Like they're in on it. They're working with the U.S. government, and because
why would they
they
be
know,
in
like,
on their own destruction?
well, because they don't think that they're gonna look. They didn't think Russia was gonna invade them, and or at least, like, look, the government that wasn't for this was the government before the coup. Before the coup, they they were trying to balance the needs of Russia and the European Union, and it was a precarious balance, but it was working out. But then when the U.S. came in and overthrew the government, they put a new government that's completely sympathetic to the U.S. because that makes the neo-Nazis in the government in Ukraine happy because they hate the Russians, and they it's like an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing.
Like, keep
That's
your
what it
friends
is.
close, keep
And
your
again,
enemies closer.
Yeah. Well, and then the way the U.S. and the globalists benefit from Ukraine, I mean, just look at Burisma and Hunter Biden. Like that's their whole money laundering operation. So it's no coincidence that the globalists and the people on the left are like screaming outrage about Ukraine, while the same, like, even though they didn't give a shit about what was happening to the Russians in eastern Ukraine like these last 8 years, they're crying this because this now threatens their own benefit, and the U.S. is their desired U.S. imperialistic position in the world. That's why they're getting like this, and of course they're using the media and war propaganda machines are in full swing to convince everyone in America that Ukraine is just this innocent, poor country that is getting attacked by just this evil invading country.
I mean,
and
it kind of is, in the sense that civilians are in the crossfire. But as far as
they
what you
are,
said with the coup,
here's like what the truth is. The truth is that the Ukrainian government is one of the most corrupt, evil governments in the world. They literally have neo-Nazis in the government that have been killing for the last 8 years.
So 1 second, do they have a
Russian
Jewish
speakers
president? Can I speculate for a second? Do they have a Jewish president as the face of their country so that they can more easily hide the neo-Nazism that's going on? Because if you have a Jewish president, it's much more hard to believe that you have so much neo-Nazi power in that same location. So it's kind of to their benefit to keep it hush hush until it's so big and out of control, and then you just can't overcome it anymore because you didn't nip it in the bud, because you didn't believe it while it was small and enabled it to grow out of proportion.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I'm sure Zelensky feels awkward from time to time, knowing that he's working with the far right national, like neo-Nazi nationalists in Ukraine.
I don't know. I'm in denial. I love Zelensky. Like he seems like such a badass. He just like puts on his uniform and he's like, oh, yeah, dude. Like he's saying that he's here and this guy's here and that guy's there and they're all there and he's gonna fight. And I don't know. It just seems like, oh my God, that's my dream leader. Like going on the front lines, like not telling me.
Let me ask you this: is it really instead of getting the women and children out of Ukraine sooner and getting even like the young kids as old as 14, like wouldn't that be more heroic as opposed to what he actually did? Is just straight up give guns to all those people?
To evacuate your entire population, that seems impossible.
Well,
and unrealistic.
It
seems more realistic to kick the bad people out than to take all the good people out.
Well, first of all, yes, you could say that, but he could have gotten a lot more people out, and he gave guns to all these people, and now you have he also let out Ukrainian criminals and gave them guns, and they're running around shooting and killing innocent people. And then at the same time, this is something else that I heard from someone living in Kiev, which is really scary, that the media, of course, isn't reporting. But after he gave guns to everyone, he also told them that, okay, so anyone who speaks Russian, shoot them because they're probably a spy. And he knows full well that
How do you
40%
know this
of
is
Ukraine,
verified? How do you know that's true that he said that?
because I know people, I'm talking to people who live in, they live in the eastern part of Ukraine, but then there's also a few people who have family living in Kiev. And the only people I can talk to, because like I don't speak Ukrainian, is people who speak Russian.
Yeah.
And that's just the state, that's the state of affairs. They're literally like, it's insane. Like Kiev is a city where like almost everyone speaks Russian, yet this guy like Zelensky, he's given guns to everyone, and he said, okay, yeah, if anyone speaks Russian, they're a Russian spy, shoot them.
He
And it's
seems
just like, and you just have,
I don't know, he seems careless but not evil. He seems like too spontaneous and fun for like a serious situation. It's almost like he's playing war, but it's a real war. People are actually dying. Like
yeah, well,
he's in a
he's
game.
just not.
He's acting like it's a game almost, like, yeah, let's do it, but like it's real and you can't play around. Like you can't just, I don't know. I feel like we can't get inside people's heads and know their intentions, but we do know their actions. And that's a little crazy. I don't
Well,
know.
all you can do at best is you can just be skeptical of everything you're hearing about what's going on in
I mean, you
Ukraine.
also have
And
broken telephone. Like
like,
he said this, and then someone else says, no, he said this. Like,
well, well,
I don't
well.
really know
So
what he
yes,
said.
you got that going on, but like you got it all comes back to the facts. And Zelensky and the media, they keep dismissing with this genocide in eastern Ukraine as just Russian propaganda, Russian misinformation, and of course our media supports that. Yet I personally met like there are Ukrainian immigrants out here in LA that I've talked to who have family in Donetsk. One woman, she was almost in tears, and she was saying that her parents are still there in Donetsk right now, and it's like living in a concentration camp. Like you have these like
Why?
Nazi regiment. Well, because you have not, they're either constantly shooting rockets into that region, like putting bombs on children's beaches, and these poor children are getting blown up in front of their parents, or they're bombing weddings,
Wait,
or
is
they
this
just straight up
happening
go in
right
there.
now?
They call,
This is happening
yeah,
right now?
well, it's been happening for the last 8. It's been happening for the last 8 years
So
since
why is it
2014,
such a
since the coup.
popular place for Jewish people to live?
Uh, I don't know.
Why?
Historically, like I said, Ukraine was always World War II. They were horrible to
One second.
Jews,
Is this why there
but
are so many orphanages, or it's because it's more of a third world country that they have orphanages, so to speak, not a foster care system? Or are there orphanages because of
um,
Chernobyl? Like why are there so many? Like I feel like there's a lot of
well,
orphanages and orphans,
it's a very
and now more,
it is kind of, it is like a third world type country, so that's what it is. So Ukraine's a very poor country, and usually when you have a very poor country, you have a very corrupt government that's okay with having a genocide in one part of the country and then denying it. That's just unfortunately how it works with those kinds of countries. So you got, the thing is like, I've confirmed, because when I heard all this about the Nazis and the genocide, I thought it was just people were being a little like they were exaggerating, it was a little dramatic, but everything that I've seen so far and and I can after this call, like I'd be glad to send you all the sources, like from the New York Times to actual like legitimate big outlets talking about this as far back as 2014. I've only found more evidence confirming that you have these neo-Nazi groups that just go around killing people, like not like intimidating, killing people who speak Russian. They don't care if they're women or children.
Oh my
They'll
god.
do it, and then it's like you got that going on, and then you also got all this stuff with NATO trying to pretty much put all these weapons into Ukraine just to oppose Russia. And and then you also, this is all happening because the U.S. overthrew a democratically elected government to put in its own puppet government in 2014. And Putin, his whole job. I'm not saying invading countries right, but from his perspective, his job is to protect Russian interests. So between a whole area of Ukraine filled with Russian speakers being murdered and all these weapons being pointed at him right at his borders.
So you're saying
It's like, yeah, of course
they
he's gonna.
were trying to poke the bear. Like he wasn't just like being random right now, like, oh, I want more power and being random and taking the place next to him, like, and trying to invade it.
Yeah,
He was being
yeah,
provoked, you're saying.
he's being provoked. And look, I mean, now that he's in Ukraine, there's no telling what he's going to do next. He could very well just go on a power trip and say, "Oh, you know what? I'm just going to take over
He's
Ukraine.
already on a
and
power
I'm
trip.
gonna." Look, yeah. Like once you poke the bear, you don't know what the bear is going to do. So
You kind of do know what the bear is going to do. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. In a sense, like all I'm pointing out is again, like I have to keep repeating this because a lot of people want, like when they hear this, they call you pro Putin or pushing Russian propaganda. I'm not justifying what Putin did.
No,
and
I
I'm
think
not
it goes
denying
without
that,
saying that he's an evil dictator or whatever it is. But
yeah, like yeah, definitely he is.
people
But
are not black
he
and
wouldn't have
white.
even he wouldn't have even been in this position. Like this wouldn't have happened if the U.S. didn't overthrow the Ukrainian government in 2014. Or let's say the U.S. did that, but then they saw the writing on the wall and they knew that eventually this was going to happen with Russia. Well, then if they at least took steps to make sure to stop the expansion of NATO.
Why don't you be like a White House intern and like advise the president? Well,
I do not want to be anywhere near the White House. I do not want to be anywhere near the White House.
See, that's the problem. We all move
government.
out of California and we all escape from all of these democratic destroyed places, Chicago, whatever, and then New York, and we run to Florida and we run to Texas, and then those places end up getting worse and worse because they're holding on by a thread because we just completely give up on it. I mean, you're still living in California, so there's that. But like most people,
yeah. Well, that.
I mean, I'm living in New York, that brings
that same. I will to myself eventually. Like what I want to say is like that brings us to like what we can do as individuals, because you got this whole federal government. Unfortunately, no one's coming to save us. I mean, I wish that was the case, but that's not going to happen. So the best thing we can do is in cities, in our local, not even in our cities, like our local communities, organize with ourselves, surround ourselves with people, make sure that like we're not relying on the media for information or the government apparatus for information. We're just sharing the truth among ourselves.
Yeah.
And of course, if like allowing dissenting opinions, like we should be allowed to disagree and argue, because that's like how human society progresses through that process.
Not through a vacuum.
You focus on what you focus on what you can control, locally, like, I mean, your school boards and protecting the children and their education. That is like hugely important too. That's like the most realistic things that can happen. And you'll notice actually that's what the federal government's the most afraid of. Like that's why they call parents at school board meetings terrorists and stuff like that. So
grassroots.
That's movements. The best thing. Exactly. That's the best thing you can do. And, because the federal government it hates anything that it can't control.
A leader can't be a leader without its followers being followers. So
exactly. So you're just like focusing on your own communities, trying to become as independent as you can, and that's literally the best you can do in the short term. In the long term, I think things are moving in a better direction because you've got more people red pilled than ever before. You got more people who, even with this Ukraine stuff, I was disappointed when I was seeing a lot of these right-wing pages I was following. They were just reposting propaganda supporting Ukraine because they're serving their neocon Republican masters. But I was also pleasantly surprised when I saw in the comments, not even people from Ukraine, but just average people, asking the simple question, like, you're going to trust the same people who were talking about COVID only a few weeks ago, or yeah.
But the thing is, we do want peace for Ukraine, and we do feel bad for Ukrainians. Like, you're talking about like in general to say that Ukraine is completely innocent and there's nothing bad about what's happening there.
Yeah. Like here's a way to rationalize it. The Ukrainian government is evil and it's literally run by neo-Nazis. That's not an exaggeration. That's just facts. But the Ukrainian people themselves are innocent. Or at
How
least,
do they have these meetings and say we want to kill Jews when the president, who is obviously at those meetings, is Jewish?
Well, because look, because this is like the next generation of Nazis. They know that they can't, I mean, they do march in the streets, they're on the open, but they also do this veneer of like, oh, it's a Ukrainian nationalism, and we need to do this to oppose Russia, and and then like they don't, a lot of their violence isn't focused on Jews. I mean, Jews are targeted, but it's not like, oh, it's just Jews. They kind of learned from World War II, so they focus on the Russian speakers, and they make it more about, oh, this is about Ukrainian national pride and stuff like that. But
this is all so stupid that like, because you speak a different language than me, I'm gonna kill you and march in the street with a candle. Like, can we grow up? I don't know. This is just it's just dumb, stupid.
I agree. I agree. It's stupid. And like almost every Ukrainian, almost every Ukrainian I've met in LA speaks Russian. There actually no, there hasn't been a single Ukrainian I've met who doesn't speak Russian. So like, even like when I see them protest, the people protesting, I hear them speaking Russian. So, I don't feel like, I feel like they're I mean, technically they are my people because half my family is from Ukraine.
Yeah.
But, it's just sad that.
Do you have family in Ukraine or in Russia right now?
Only in Russia right now, thankfully. But they're in a pretty bad spot right now because of the sanctions that are being put on Russia, which I can understand because.
Are they being drafted into the army?
No, they're not being drafted, but the sanctions are going to really affect them, and it's pretty much to the point where my mom's talking.
Wow, are Russians in general forced to be in the army?
Yeah, they're drafted. Well, so that's what's sad. Russia already, from what I've heard, they've lost like close to 5,000 soldiers in Ukraine, and most of the soldiers are 18-year-olds who are drafted. So that's like why Putin is, that's the evilness on his side. He's straight up these 18-year-old boys and sending him in Ukraine. Again,
I feel like 18 is so young to be like going off to battle. Yeah. Like, I feel like it's too young. Like 18-year-olds these days, like they're busy like making TikTok dances and like they're busy like smoking their jewels and being immature. Like how can you trust them to drive a freaking tank? Like that's scary. Like that just seems like an exaggeration of trust.
Well, and then Zelensky is pretty much demanding that 4 boys as young as 15 fight for Ukraine. And
15?
No, 14.
Okay. Now we're going back to the olden days.
So, it's just like, and so you on both sides, you have these innocent, you have people who are also Putin. He said that his Russian soldier, he message to the Ukrainians that he said, look, when we come in, or you're drafted into the army and you we're not going to kill you. And the only people he's not offering that he will shoot and kill, which I'm actually.
You're getting cut off and you're saying something interesting.
Hold on a second. I need to. This thing's just gone a little longer than I expected. So basically, what I was going to say was that what Putin issued this proclamation to the Ukrainian soldier, to pretty much all the soldiers in the Ukrainian army. And what he is demanding is that, or not demanding, he just told them that, look, if you were drafted and you're not a paid Ukrainian soldier and you lay down your arms, we're not going to shoot or kill you. And so basically anyone who's just defending Ukraine and you just got drafted, like they'll be fine. I mean, that's what he said. I'm not sure like to how good his soldiers were at following his orders, but that's literally like
as long as they're not being provoked and attacked, they won't attack.
Yeah, if they come across them and they just put down their weapons, they'll let them go. They're not going to hurt them. Mm-hmm. But the people that he's not extending that to, and that I'm happy he's not extending it to, are the Nazis in the Ukrainian army, the ultra-right paid army, which has been infiltrated by these Nazis.
Got it. By the way, I have a friend. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that it's that goes back to the fact that what's really interesting about, I don't mean interesting as in it's like this is a good thing, but he's invading Ukraine, but they still they haven't been destroying radio towers, and they haven't just gone like full blown. We're going to kill every Ukrainian in sight. The casualties, civilian casualties for Ukrainians. Last time I heard, it was like, and don't be wrong, it's still a lot. It's very sad. It was only like 400 or 600 people. And you would think like if the Russian army is invading your country, yeah, but don't you think it would be a lot higher? It'd be like in the thousands and stuff. Like
not yet. No. Civilians? No.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. If the Russian army, like they were going full bore, like we're just gonna go in and kill everyone, then you'd have, I mean, they'd just blow up every building in sight. And at least like on the first day, like there'd be 1,000. I mean, like, and again, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of people. Like a single person on the innocent Ukrainian shouldn't have had to die. I'm not justifying that. But what I'm saying is you compare that with the fact that the Russians, assuming these numbers are accurate, which I'm pretty sure, knowing Russian strategy is just like, we're like ever since World War One has been, or probably throughout history, all histories have been like, oh, we're just gonna throw a bunch of soldiers without any strategy and like let them, just die. So that Russian strategy, like the numbers as of right now for Russian casualties is 4,000, maybe even like up to 5,000, and it's only been 5 days. So
death on either side is not good. It's sad. But I have a good friend that like a friend from childhood that she would go to Ukraine every single summer, and she like single-handedly created a camp and a like year-round like winter camp, summer camp, whatever, like programs during the year to keep in touch, program for Jewish orphans or orphan girls in Ukraine. And it's just phenomenal what she created. Like I don't know how, she's younger than me. She was like 18 when she started it, and she created this whole movement. And now I don't know, I'm so curious like how her orphans are doing, how like they're managing the fact that I'm assuming she can't go back and like do the summer camp now, and she can't, whatever, like that must be so hard, even with the Zoom, with Starlink and Elon Musk and all that. I don't know about that, but since we spent a lot of time on this, but I wanted to get in a random I wanted to ask you some, because I love learning languages. I speak French, but that doesn't help here, so I do want to learn some Russian words. So if you can tell me like war related words, like how you say bomb in Russian. I don't know. Teach me like a sentence. Teach me something you think is is teach worthy in Russian.
Yeah. So bomba, that's bomb. I mean,
really? Like bomba in Hebrew?
Yeah.
That you eat? Okay. Yeah, that's easy to remember.
Yeah, but it's like bomba.
Bomba. Okay.
And then like a gun, like a machine gun, that's automat.
That's what? Automat?
Automat.
Automat. Automat. Okay. And how do you say a tank? A tank?
Tank.
Tank. Okay.
Is this tank?
With a D or with a T?
No, with a T. Tank.
T. Okay. How do you say attack?
Attack. Атаковать or
really?
Атакуют. Yeah. It's
Атаковать.
a lot of Russian words are funny enough that they're just like they're adapted English words.
So funny. Yeah, French is like that also.
Yeah.
Can you give me like a sentence and then like tell me what it means so I can learn a full sentence?
Okay. Я надеюсь, что война закончится скоро.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So that.
What? Huh? You gotta say.
Я надеюсь.
Я надеюсь.
Я надеюсь.
Я надеюсь.
Что война скоро.
Что война скоро.
Закончится.
Закончится. I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
Я война
скоро
закончится.
So pretty much that means I hope the war ends soon.
Oh, okay, peaceful. I'm asking you all these like, how do you say bomb? And you're like, I hope the war. Okay, 1 second. Tell me the sentence again. How does it go?
Я надеялся, что война закончится.
Я надеюсь, вона закончится. I
Что,
can't.
что война закончится.
Что вона закончится. Okay. I'll have to listen back to it.
Close enough.
Yeah. Okay. So that's basically the moral of the story, is that we hope the war ends soon and we want peace in the world and in the land. Do you think that this whole Bible prophecy situation with Gog and Magog and all of that stuff, do you think that that's like, this is a prophecy unraveling, or you're like maybe, or you're completely like, nah, that's not like
I
World
hope
War
not,
III
because
and all
most of
that?
this, I hope not, because most of those apocalyptic prophecies, I don't want, I hope there's not going to be a situation like that.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's just, unfortunately, like, it's really hard to tell. I'm hoping this ends soon, and that, the killing of innocent Ukrainians and
I
innocent
mean,
Russian speaking Ukrainians and
yeah,
these
but no,
poor,
sister.
yeah, exactly. Like, I hope it all ends, because it's just, even though we're in it right now, like, it's almost surreal, because I remember it hasn't even been a full week yet. And I
Do you
remember
think
a
it's
week
gonna end
ago,
soon, or do you think it's gonna drag on and become a world war, or you don't have an opinion on that?
I don't know. I really don't know. All I can say is that for the US, our top priority should be to avoid a full-on war with Russia, because they have nukes and we have nukes, and that's not going to end
Didn't
well for
Biden just
anyone. So,
send some people from the border and divert them to go help Ukrainians?
yeah, which is fine. He's just helping Ukrainians. But if he starts saying, okay, like, we need to respond with military action against Russia, and
I thought like when you see
you
Trump shaking hands with Putin, I thought they're like supposed to be friends. So what happened? If we're on Ukraine, is it possible that we're on Russia's side and Ukraine's side? We're not the enemy of
no, the
Russia?
US, no, the US government and the globalists and all those other people, they want war. They want war with Russia at all costs. They hate Russia, and they want, or bringing it back to just the US, the US wants to keep its spot of being the number one world power, even if it means putting us at the brink of a nuclear war with Russia.
And right now, who
And I
would you
mean, that's
say is
just,
in the world power spot? Is it Russia, China, the US?
well,
It depends
well,
on if we're talking money or power or military or.
well, I mean, where like, I would say it's the US, because across the board we have a better economy, better weapons than Russia. But then Russia, they just got a shitload of nukes, and we're just and they're in a pretty.
1 second, can't a nuclear weapon literally like destroy an entire country with like one explosion? Or I know nothing about nuclear explosions.
Not one explosion, but Russia, they have a nuke right now, supposedly a missile, where just from one missile, it can shoot out, they shoot it, and then that one missile detaches a bunch of smaller missiles. And all those smaller missiles, they can target every major city in Texas. So one missile can take out the whole state of Texas.
So why aren't they using it? Why not?
Well, because they don't want to use it, because they know if they do that to us, we're going to do that to them, and then we're going to nuke each other, and boom, it's the end of humanity. So we need to avoid
So
that.
so is it like a silent, like it's an unspoken thing that no one's actually going to use their nuclear power,
Yeah, yeah,
or they're
something we've had since the
or they're
60s.
trying to build their nuclear power to the point where they can destroy the whole US at once, so that they're not leaving the rest of the US to attack them back?
Well, it's since the 60s, we've had this thing called mutual assured destruction, where once everyone got nukes, it was understood that if we fire it, specifically at Russia, we fire at Russia, then they're going to fire a nuke, and it's going to go back and forth until pretty much the whole planet's just been destroyed, because that's just how powerful these weapons are. So with the U.S., again, going back to Ukraine, what they were trying to do, they were putting these in. George W. Bush ripped up the anti in 2001, ripped up the anti-ballistic missile treaty, which basically said that you can't put missiles that shoot down nuclear missiles close to Russia. So we've been putting those missiles to do that in Ukraine, We've also been putting them around Russia through the countries that are in NATO. And the implication to Russia is basically, if we shoot a nuke at you and then you try to respond, we're going to shoot down all your nukes, so that way you can't hurt us, but we can just keep hurting you. And that's the whole reason why Putin was driven to developing more sophisticated nukes. Nukes that can be fired from submarines that you can't detect, nukes that can fly around the world, specifically around the South Pole, which we have really no defense against.
What the U.S. has in their armory,
No, I'm saying what. No, I'm saying what Russia has. Like, they developed these advanced nukes in response to all this stuff that the U.S. has done.
So they have more advanced nukes than us.
Well, I don't know if they're
How do you say nuclear weapon in Russian? Nuclearovsky?
No. It's ядерное оружие.
Ядерное оружие?
Ядерное оружие.
Ядерное оружие. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to know if a Russian wants to bomb me now. I'll know to run away in time. Very helpful.
Yeah, just run away before you try saying that whole word, because you're gonna lose like at least a minute or 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll be able to run to the next state over. As long as I have 2 seconds, it's all good. Okay. Well, this has been very, very informative, and I appreciate you taking 300 hours to do this podcast and teach me 3 words in Russian and all the other information. Really, really, I felt like I was in history class. So I appreciated having someone that I can bother with all my questions. And it sounds like you know what you're talking about. So I appreciate it. And yeah, peace to humanity, peace to the world. Yeah, right. But I mean,
I hope
technically
so.
all want
I
it.
hope so.
Yeah. And again, thank you so much for coming on. What's your name is Nick Berson, so follow him on his Instagram, on his social media.
Yeah, Nick.Berson. That's my Instagram.
Nick.Berson, Berson. And I'm _ Rachel Sam, because someone took the Rachel Sam without the underscore, so I wasn't allowed to do whatever.
Oh yeah, it's so annoying what happens.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so have a good night wherever you are. You're in California. It's the nighttime, right?
Yeah, it's like almost 10 p.m. out here.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be in touch. I guess you'll send me your sources, even though I really don't need them, honestly. I really trust you, but in case anyone else asks me for them. And yeah, thank you so much again. It was nice meeting you. And
yeah, of course.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.